Meeting will come to order. This is the Cache County Council meeting, Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. We welcome you. Please make sure that you have signed in there by our clerk. He's got a list of who has attended. We excuse Councilwoman Tidwell today. She's not able to come. And we will go ahead and begin with an opening from Councilman Paul Borup.
Thank you. I figure we start off with a little quote here. History is an interesting thing, and it's amazing how things that everything old is new again. But C.S. Lewis had a quote that I've really enjoyed reading over the last little bit. And it says, "Of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep, his cupidity may be at some point satiated, but those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience. They may be more likely to go to heaven, yet at the same time likelier to make a hell of earth. This very kindness stings with intolerable insult. To be cured against one's will and cured of states which we may not regard as a disease is to be put on a level of those who have not yet reached the age of reason or those who never will, to be classified with infants, imbeciles, and domestic animals." So I'll just end with a word of prayer as well. Our Father in heaven, we're so grateful unto Thee for the bounteous blessings we have. We're grateful to live in this country and for the founding fathers that established a form of government on this earth that has brought forth more prosperity and goodwill than any other. We're grateful to live in this valley and its wonderful bounty and the wonderful people that are here. We ask Thee to please bless us this day that we can make decisions that would be of benefit for our fellow citizens, and that we can continue in freedom and in prosperity, and that we can look out to those that are struggling and have issues and reach out a helping hand to them. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And if you'll stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Paul, for that opening. And that quote is always a good reminder to us in leadership positions to watch out for that. Thank you. Okay, the first item of business is to review and approve the agenda, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the amended agenda with the change that we move number 9 up between 6 and 7.
Is there a second?
Second.
Due to time constraints
Yes.
issues. So.
Yes, thank you, Dave. Okay, it's moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The second is approval of the minutes from April 13th.
Move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Before we approve, I just want to thank Bryson for his work on the minutes. That's a really long meeting, and you got some great details in there and did a good job, so thank you. I know that wasn't an easy task. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Are there any follow-ups to the minutes? Hearing none, we will move to the report of our county executive, David Zook. David.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just have a couple of items for you this evening. First, I have an appointment, and it is to appoint Melinda Lee of Hyde Park to the Cache County Planning Commission.
Is there a motion to appoint Melinda Lee?
Move to approve. Who is Melinda Lee? I don't know.
I know Melinda actually went to high school together.
She's got a nice name, that's good
She's
enough.
got a nice name.
Melinda, I guess I'll give you a little bit of input if you'd like on the Planning Commission. I've been looking at planning commissioners and made a couple of appointments so far. I looked at them originally and I realized that they were not spread out evenly amongst the districts, which in doing research, there's no requirement to do so. However, I would assume that each of you would prefer that, to have equal representation throughout the county. So I'd like to move in that direction at one point. We still have a couple of districts unrepresented, but one of the districts that was not represented on the Planning Commission was Chairwoman Worthen's district, and so I asked her for some suggestions of potential appointees in her district. The other thing I noticed in looking at the Planning Commission is that there were no females on the commission, and so she and I had some discussions about some potential applicants from her district, including female applicants. And I happen to know Melinda as well. Melinda and I served on the Hyde Park Planning Commission together. Melinda actually works for Hyde Park City and is the staff person who supports the Planning Commission as well. So in my experience working with her, she's pretty familiar with the workings of a Planning Commission. She understands a lot of the detailed rules and processes involved, and she's a hard worker. She does her homework. When I served with her on the Planning Commission, she asked all the right questions and always came well prepared. So based on Gina's recommendation and mine, Melinda's before you for appointment to this evening.
I'll move to approve the appointment of Melinda Lee as a member of the County Planning Commission.
Is there a second?
I already moved.
You did already move, huh? So you're the second.
Okay,
So,
I said she
I
had a
echo
pretty-
second.
I said she had a nice name.
That's true.
that's right.
Yeah, I'll remember.
So we'll take
But with
move
what-
by Gordy and a second from
What
Carl.
Executive Zuka said that her name fits her well.
I know her from high school, and she is a hard worker and really smart and very detail-oriented. She'll do a great job, so. Okay, all in favor of appointing Melinda Lee to the Cache County Planning Commission, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. The next item I have is the March 2021 financial statement is before you. There's no action required on that. It's just for your information. And other items I just wanted to give you an update on a couple of things that are going on. And I can't remember if we talked about this yet, but our clerk auditor hired a couple of internal auditors and filled those positions. And they're actually both attorneys, which I think is fantastic. I was wondering what type of talent he'd be able to attract in those positions, and very pleased that he got some people with pretty high level of education and experience to do our internal audits. And these are not financial audits. We have accountants who perform those, but the internal audits are performance audits, which are essentially and primarily focused on whether or not we're in compliance with laws and policies, ordinances, things like that, which I think attorneys are well qualified to do. So I volunteered my office to be the first office to be audited, and they've already begun that process. I've met with them, and they've interviewed me. And I believe the recorder's office also volunteered to be audited as well. So that process is underway. Just wanted to make sure you were aware of that, and want to thank our clerk auditor for his diligence in getting that program up and running. I think it's been some time since we've had an internal audit, and looking forward to getting through all of our departments and having them all audited for performance so we can find ways that we can better serve the people of Cache County. I also wanted to give you an update on a couple of transportation-related items. The Cache County Council of Governments met last night, and the chairman of that group is here this evening. Mayor Drew of Providence is currently serving as chair. And there are a number of things we worked on last night. One was that we authorized $4.4 million to be distributed this year for eligible projects. So that application period will be opening soon, and all of the cities in the county will have an opportunity to apply for projects. In addition to that, the COG authorized $150,000 as a grant to Cache County for us to do a countywide Transportation Master Plan. And that is in response to the discussions that we've been having about bonding for road projects. I updated you once or twice about that, or I guess giving you a heads up that that was something that was going to be discussed by the COG. After much discussion, several executive committee discussions and full COG board discussions, the consensus was that there was a need for a countywide master plan that would look at all of the road needs across the county, the unincorporated areas, the incorporated areas within the cities, look at the master plans of each of the cities. And the feeling also was that the county was the best suited to be the lead agency on that project. So they gave us $150,000 to do that project, and we will be working with our Public Works Department to prepare a request for proposals that we will send out and hire an outside engineering firm to perform that planning study, most likely an engineering firm, maybe a planning and engineering firm. So that should be getting underway within the coming months. In addition to what's been going on at the COG, I wanted to give you an update about something that's been happening at the state level. Our state legislature authorized infrastructure funds this year, more than they ever have, the largest infrastructure spending bill they've ever authorized. And they meaning UDOT and the Transportation Commission, came up with a list of project priorities that should be funded over the next decade using those dollars. Unfortunately, when that list was published, there was nothing in Cache County proposed for all of those funds. That was disappointing to see that, and we wrote a letter, a joint letter from the COG. Did you sign it as the COG or the CMPO? CMPO, sorry. From the Cache Metropolitan Planning Organization, myself, and Mayor Daines, because Logan City's Main Street project is on the state's master transportation project list, and it was actually ranked number 8 out of about 90 projects, and it was not on there. Part of the reason, in response to it, we sent a letter to the Transportation Commission and to UDOT, and then I met with the director of UDOT and discussed it with him. He told me that he felt like the project was not ready yet, and we agree that the project is not ready yet. Logan City does not know exactly what they're going to do. One of the potential options they're looking at is what's been called the one-way couplet, but that has not been decided yet. They haven't done all of their studies. So that was one of the reasons that was given to us, was that the project was not ripe. However, there were other projects on the list that were proposed for funding that were equally not ripe. So we protested that in our letter, in my discussion with the director of UDOT, and after not receiving a favorable response at that, I went to the governor's office and requested additional information and justification. And then last Friday, I testified before the Transportation Commission, the State Transportation Commission, along with Mayor Daines, Senator Chris Wilson, and Representative Johnson, Dan Johnson. And we made our case to the Transportation Commission. We've been told now that we are on the list, and that we could receive up to $100 million from these funds that are available. So we're pleased that our efforts, it was a coordinated effort from the CMPO, Logan City, Cache County, and our state representatives. We're pleased to hear that we're on that list. It's not finalized yet, and won't be finalized until we actually receive the money from them. But I think it's a reminder that we need to remain vigilant, and that sometimes being here in a far corner of the state, we're susceptible to being forgotten about, and we need to make sure that they don't forget about us. So that's all I have this evening for updates. Be happy to answer any questions. If not, thank you.
Thank you for doing that. They forget we're here on the weather even, so.
That's so true.
I might bring the council up for the project, the 3200 roundabout, or the road they're planning on redirecting through 3200 to the highway through my property. And just in the last month, they have come to me and said that, yeah, now they have the funding and now they're going, and I would assume that what you've done has had something to do with that. And so that is probably one of the places that they want to start on that next year and then go on through. But they're doing a lot of studies and whatnot. They were in my field the other day, drilling holes and seeing what they could do. So at least that one's coming. And then I know we got the Highway 30, the Valley View Highway, that's, you know, right soon. I think that one's ready to go.
Yeah, we did talk to them about those two projects, and we thanked them for getting rolling on those. Both of those should be moving forward with construction soon. Those have been two of our highest priority projects that we've been pushing UDOT to get done. The 3200 South project is a critical safety improvement with the number of accidents that happen there. It's an offset intersection, and they'll be signalizing that with the realignment. And then SR 30 is something that we've been pushing on for years as well to get that widened.
I think when they get talking about SR 30, we might be wise to get them to do another traffic review, simply because I think the traffic has increased quite a bit in the last 2 years since they've done the study, and maybe that would qualify us for a 4-lane all the way through it instead of going from a 4-lane to a 2-lane when it hits the wetlands and then back up. I've always complained to them and expressed to them that we all know that when you're coming down the freeway and all of a sudden the traffic will come to almost a stop, and when you get there, they have taken and shut down one of the lanes that you're traveling, and then it backs the traffic way, way, way up, and that's what's going to happen along Highway 30 when you come along there, and all of a sudden it goes from a 4-lane to a 2-lane.
Yeah, that is something that I brought up too, because that's something I'm concerned about, the fact that they're not putting a 4-lane highway all the way through there. It will be 4 lanes in some areas, but then neck down to 2 lanes, so it'll essentially have passing lanes in places. What I've been told is that they, because I did ask again about that, I know they've been asked multiple times about that, and I asked again, and I was told that they're concerned about the environmental impact and their ability to be able to justify that. However, I was told that they will be securing the right-of-way and putting in the road base that is wide enough for 4 lanes.
Yeah.
So that when the time does come that they are able to put 4 lanes in, the environmental impact won't be there, and it should be an easier expansion. However, much more money will have to be allocated to be able to do that. It'll be a whole separate project.
I think the reason they said that, at least their report back to the council over the years, is that there isn't enough traffic along there to justify a 4-lane all the way through. And then when you get to the impact of the wetlands, that's what gets itself in trouble.
Yep.
So anyway, it would really be interesting if when it finally comes right down to when they're going to start the project, to do another traffic survey to see if we've now made it to the limit where we can maybe justify the 4 lanes all the way through.
Can you ask about that, David, and see if they could do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't it supposed to start next year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I understood.
Any other questions?
One other comment just under the, you talked about being vigilant. I think one thing that we need to really look out for, you mentioned those one-way couplets. Now, there's a mayor that I'm not naturally politically aligned with that happens to be the Transportation Secretary of the United States right now, Pete Buttigieg. And he really did some fantastic things in reinvigorating South Bend by removing one-way streets within that town. So I think we should really look closely at that with the CMPO. I mean, we're not Logan, we're Cache County, but we're looking at these transportation things. And to go and make mistakes by putting in one-way couplets that other towns have removed in order to revitalize, we should be really vigilant about that before that's on our doorstep and not able to be unwound. And I say that from somebody that you say, you're at ideological odds in a lot of ways, but we need to look for ways that we can agree on things. And that's one I think we should really, really watch before it pops up on us.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not convinced that that's the best solution. And that's one of the things that, one of the points that we made to the Transportation Commission is that the solution development process is still underway. And what actually comes out of that, we don't know yet what that will be. However, we want to have the funds lined up for whatever is decided.
Okay. Thank you, and thanks for working hard to get us on that list. Appreciate that. Okay, we're going to move to number 9 that we inserted. Board of Equalization matters. We need a motion to go into the Board of Equalization.
I'll move that we move in to function as the Board of Equalization.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we move to operate as the Board of Equalization. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I forgot to say aye. Aye. Motion carries. We have two different, we have A and B. I think we could probably talk about them at the same time because they kind of go together. So we have some property tax exemption requests, and then we have some findings and determinations, several that were looked at more in depth. And Clerk Bradfield. Clerk Bradfield.
As your clerk, I just wanted to thank you for
Slash
the...
auditor, sorry. That's the important part of this, auditor, right?
Yes, clerk to the BOE, though. I want to thank you for the opportunities that have been provided to me to be your clerk for the Board of Equalization. But tonight I wanted to recognize one of my employees. I wanted to recognize, before she comes up and stands up in front of you, Diana Schaefer. She's been doing a tremendous amount of work to make sure that these are up to date for you every week, that you as a board are ready and prepared. I've been coming in for the past 2 Saturdays to work on various other projects, and each Saturday she's here making sure that you have all the information and facts for these difficult, not specifically these, but at times these which can be difficult cases. And so I just wanted to introduce her tonight as someone who should be recognized for all of her hard work and diligence. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Diana Schaefer.
Thank you, Jess. Diana? I should say Deputy Auditor Schaefer. Yep.
So if you want to address questions in each of the cases, you lead us through them, and I'll respond to your questions.
I confess I didn't read all 97 pages of the
137 on that one.
37 on the other one.
How about 189 in one of them? So,
A lot of information in there.
Does the council feel like they need to continue any of these because they feel like they didn't have enough time to read them?
No, I had an opportunity at least to sit in on some of the hearings.
so there are two that we have put recommendations down, but have qualified them. We're still waiting on some information from one of the churches that we've been involved in some litigation with. And I think that they will be forthcoming with some more specific information this next week. So for them specifically, I would be appreciative if someone would make a motion to table that, perhaps.
So that information that we have from them, specifically on their tenants in the Champ House, that's from last year? It's not current?
No, actually, at 6:30 last night, I got some information, and I talked to the representative, our contact there, and somehow there was a miscommunication between county officials and their representatives that they didn't have to send it. But they really have made a huge effort since the evening of the 22nd, which is like 2 business days, for them to scramble. So if they could have, that additional time, I think that would be fair.
Okay, so that's the other church then that we still are getting more information on, correct?
That would be,
That's on listed at Grow and Multiply Church?
no, we have everything that we're going to get from them.
Okay.
It's the one that we've been in litigation with, the Episcopal, that we've had the miscommunication with.
That's when I moved to postpone, get more time taking a look at it. All
It-
that information, that's definitely one of them.
And the information on the Grow and Multiply, like I say, that is 189 pages, and I apologize profusely for sending it to Janine today, but it was like council members wanted to review it, attorney's office was involved in it, we even had a meeting this afternoon from about 11 to 12:30. And then I had to revise, and so it wasn't even submitted till this afternoon. And usually you guys get it the week before. So I really don't think you've had a chance to review it and make an informed decision. So on that, Church, I would also request a motion for a table.
I'll second Dave's motion on the
And
first one.
I
You
would even
wanna-
add this, I would add this second one too, that she just described on the,
Grow.
yeah, I don't see it on here, but we definitely need to push that one to the,
Okay, so the motion that's been made and seconded is to postpone till the next meeting, the Corporation of the Episcopal Church
Episcopal Church,
and the Grow and Multiply Church.
those two.
Okay, so that's been made and seconded?
Madam Chair?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
The office would recommend approval this evening based on the documentation you have, the Episcopal Church. And if you'd like me to speak further to that, I will. Don't need that.
If the council may not have had time to review
I
that.
don't think anybody's had time to
and I-
review it, have they? I haven't
No,
seen
I
it in
didn't,
my
I wasn't
packet.
even, and I know about it, so.
I don't think we should review it until we have it. I don't think we should approve it until we've had some time to really read it and see about it. 199 pages or how many there is. It's gonna take me quite a while to get through.
Okay, any further
Are we
discussion?
bound by any legal agreements or proceedings?
No, we are not. I just wanted to go on the record that the Attorney's Office, and I understand that you ought to have an opportunity and take an opportunity to review all of the documents. But we believe that the documents you have in front of you are sufficient to justify granting that, and that there's not a need to wait for additional documents, although there may be a need for you to review the documents you have.
Thank you, John. Please put that in the minutes, Bryson. Thank you. Okay, any
and if I-
further discussion? Go ahead, Diana, do you have
I
something?
could add that there's one other department that has been asked for their recommendations, which would be the Assessor's Office, Kathleen Howell, to weigh in on these two cases. I believe she's here tonight, but if you're not going to review them, then
I think we just want to, well, we have a motion pending, so let's do the motion. All in favor of postponing till our next meeting, the Episcopalian Church and the Grow and Multiply Church, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, motion carries. So we're going to put that on our next agenda. Let me write that on there.
The others, there was Cache Valley Community Health, Bear Lake Community Health, the Sunshine Terrace, and IHC.
Yes, we do have a note that Stevens Henniger, which is under here as Center for Excellence, withdrew.
They withdrew their.
They withdrew. Mhm, they're no longer
Those are
operating.
the three IHC. I move to approve those. Those three.
I'll second.
Okay. So been moved and seconded to approve IHC, Sunshine Terrace, what was the other one?
Cache Valley Community Health.
Cache
Bear
Valley.
Lake Community.
Cache Valley Community Health Center doing business as Bear Lake Community. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Those are approved. And then the USU Research Space Dynamics Lab, do we need to approve that, or is it just?
I would like an official motion to put in the file as we close it. We do have a federal court ruling that James Swink got from the Attorneys General. I think it's still in an appeal, but they have ruled that Space Dynamics is actually a quasi-government organization. In addition to that, I reviewed their articles of incorporation, which state they are wholly owned by Utah State. All of their operations benefit Utah State, and if dissolved, all of the proceeds will go to Utah State. So I think that with an open conscience that I can recommend a non-taxable status for them moving forward, which would relieve them of the obligation to file with us each year.
I specifically left that one out because I could not make that motion.
Okay, I wondered. I thought, did you forget that, Dave?
I left that one out.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve Space Dynamics Lab.
Okay, is there a second?
If somebody is gonna second it, it won't be me. I'll just take the opportunity to say bureaucracy is a subsidy, and if you got a couple good lobbyists, sometimes you might be able to get this, but I'm not gonna vote for it even though.
Okay, is there any second?
Well, I'm gonna second it, and I'm one that's been opposed to it for a long, long time, but it appears that we're not gonna win anything. Yeah. We might as well just object to what we're doing and still do it.
So if James Swink had some information, John, do you have any information you can pass on to us on this, or what?
James has followed this one in detail, but my understanding is that they've been applying for the educational exemption. They don't need that. And I'm not speaking about past years, but there's been recent legislation that says to get the educational exemption, you have to have students and a regular curriculum, and Space Dynamics Lab does not. And so this year they've thought, whoa, we're about to lose our exemption, and then realized, but we're a governmental entity, and so we shouldn't have, we don't need to be applying for an exemption all along, we just don't get taxed, because we're a governmental entity. And sent some case law to James Swing from a federal case that I have not read, so I can't tell you, but apparently it stands for the proposition that Space Dynamics Lab is a government.
And
In-
it's still being actively litigated, right? I
It-
mean, they
it's
have a
that- So
decision.
they won that, but I believe it was going to appeal, and I did include the page from the case law where they specifically said USERF is the governmental entity, which you guys all have for your purview.
Yeah, I don't agree with it either, but I don't know that we have a lot of opportunity
Sounds
to
like
argue.
At this point, that's the current state of the law with regard to them. If it were to get overturned on further appeal, then change.
But even, if I could state, even without that ruling as to being a government entity, if we look to their articles of incorporation, which we do on every single one of these exclusives, are you a nonprofit? What is your purpose? That's what the articles tell us. In a close review of those articles of incorporation, owned by, benefited to, and dissolved to Utah State speaks strongly to me and puts them under 11013A of the code.
Okay. Gordy, did you have a real second, or was it just a thinking
There was
about
a
it
real
second?
second.
Okay.
I don't think
I wasn't sure.
I don't think we're in a position with what has been decided and what has been discussed that we can deny it at this point until, maybe the appeal comes through and some things like that. But the way I read what was sent to us in our packets, it's obvious that they're owned by Utah State, the land's owned by Utah State, they become a government entity.
That's the conclusion I had too. I didn't see any option really.
I don't agree with how they do it, but, I feel bad when I have to pay taxes in these big places like that.
Well, we have others that qualify, they're making billions of dollars, as long as they qualify under the test of the charitable gift, we still have to
We still have to do it, and
follow the law.
until we can change the law, there's not a lot we can change.
David, Zook?
I'm just curious, I'm new to this discussion. I'm curious what the concern is.
I'm curious.
I've always seen them as part of Utah State University, who would charge the university. I'm just curious what the concern is.
Is it financial or otherwise?
Concern I think that I've heard expressed from the council is they don't fit education. They don't have students, they don't have teachers, they don't have curriculum.
And that's why they're coming with,
Right. Am I accurate in that?
If we'll remember back a few years ago, we put an appeal that we didn't want to tax exempt Henniker College because of the situation with them. And they did have students, and so as a result, they could qualify. Then there was another one that came through that we were requested to give them a tax exempt status, and that was It was a group at Utah State University that was professors and whatnot, and they had a whole bunch of think tank type of stuff, and I don't even remember what the name of it was.
The Strata case.
Strata, yeah.
And that is why the law changed. Strata is actually the impetus behind the change in the 59-2-1101 code, where they expanded the definition of the educational to include curriculum, faculty, and students. And so an unintended consequence then was the space dynamics issue, which we had to drill down on this year.
Yeah. And right now, I'm not aware of Space Dynamics Lab having students that they.
No, they said they didn't, and then they took this other direction with the AG's office, and I looked at their file. So whatever you,
Okay,
ladies and gentlemen, vote, then we stand by that.
any further discussion?
We've had a motion, let's see how they want to vote.
Yeah, are you calling the question?
I am.
Okay, there's a motion to end debate. Is there any objection to ending debate on this? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of approving Space Dynamic SDL, that's easier to say, SDL's exemption, say aye.
Aye.
Reluctantly and with heartburn, I have to say aye.
So noted. Any objection?
Aye.
Any abstention? Aye. I have a conflict. So do we have 4 votes? 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion carries.
Staying.
Carries. Okay.
That concludes our business. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the extension of time on the 2 complex cases.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to move out of the Board of Equalization.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to move out of the Board of Equalization. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we will now move to number 7, items of special interest, and the proclamation of the National Day of Prayer. And it's our pleasure to have Pastor Ron Flesner with us. Thank you, Pastor.
First, I'd like a signature on this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to read the proclamation again this year. This is actually the most important piece of business here tonight because prayer is the most powerful, most precious resource that we all have to bring God's hand of blessing, to ask for His forgiveness for our mistakes and mess-ups, and then also just to actually preserve this nation. You're welcome to disagree with me, but I totally believe this nation was birthed in prayer, has been sustained in prayer, and will continue to be sustained by the prayers of those who seek the Lord in faith. The National Day of Prayer, this year it's the 70th. It's on Thursday, May 6th. It's always the first Thursday in May. And I would encourage you, this room would make a great prayer chapel, but set aside that day for prayer, or get together for prayer, organize prayer meetings, attend prayer meetings. If the violence and all the crud that's happening in our nation right now is not enough to move us to prayer, what will be? We need to pray. On the National Day of Prayer itself, I will be down at the state capitol. You're welcome to join me there on the south steps to pray. I'm sorry, I should introduce myself a little bit better. My name is Ron Flesner. I am the senior pastor for IFCF Ogden, Utah. And since I am a senior, that makes me a senior pastor. And I also serve as a state coordinator for the National Day of Prayer Task Force here in Utah. This year is going to be especially powerful because one thing, and I'll get you some more information on this, incorporated into it is a special apology to First Nation peoples, the Indians that were here, because genuine apologies many times have not come across, and our government has not done a good job of keeping its word many times. So I'll try to update you on that process. Next year, the National Day of Prayer is May 5th, 2022. I encourage you to set that day aside, but also I would like you to join me on prayer on Sunday mornings. And this is the last item I have before I read the proclamation. The Lord has opened up a door for me to pray for about 25 minutes every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock on station KUTR AM 820 95.3 FM. It won't be a call-in, but a program for prayer requests because there's over 1,000 people that are a part of this. But I encourage you to join me on Sunday mornings for prayer at 8 o'clock because the National Day of Prayer means nothing without National Daily Prayer. So with that, thank you for your indulgence in my announcements. Proclamation, National Day of Prayer, May 6th, 2021. Whereas the 70th observance of the National Day of Prayer will be held on Thursday, May 6th, 2021 with the theme, Lord, we pray, pour out your love, life, and liberty, based on 2 Corinthians 3:17. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And whereas a National Day of Prayer has been part of our national heritage since it was declared by the First Continental Congress in 1775 and the United States Congress in 1952 approved as a joint resolution that the President shall set aside and proclaim a suitable day each year other than a Sunday as a National Day of Prayer on which the people of the United States may turn to God in prayer and meditation in churches, in groups, and as individuals. And whereas the United States Congress in 1988 by Public Law 100-307 as amended, establishes an act to provide for setting aside the first Thursday in May as the date on which the National Day of Prayer is celebrated. And whereas leaders and citizens of our communities, cities, states, and nation are afforded the privilege of prayer with the joy of seeking divine guidance, strength, protection, and comfort from Almighty God. And whereas recognizing the love of God, we citizens of Cache County, Utah, treasure the freedom to gather in prayer, exercising reliance on God's power in the face of present challenges and threats, asking for his blessing on every individual of our county. And now, therefore, I, David Zook, Cache County Executive, do hereby proclaim Thursday, May 6th, 2021 as a day of prayer throughout the county of Cache, and I commend this observance to all of our citizens. Again, thank you so much. If you need to move its adoption tonight, I'd encourage you to do that. But again, thank you so much for making this an incredible item of special interest tonight.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you so much for being with us.
I'll move that we adopt this proclamation of the National Day of Prayer.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the proclamation of the National Day of Prayer. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, we will move to item 7B, Providence City request for changes in RAPS funding project location. We have Shaler Gunnell.
So Shaler and I are both here. My name is Ryan Snow. I'm the city manager for Providence City. And Shaler is our park and recreation manager. So our request comes after we did a thorough park, trail, and recreation master plan. We had come to the council, to the county in request for some RAPS funding to build pickleball courts. After we went to the public and went through our master planning effort, we found that the interest and the desire was to move those throughout more of our parks rather than isolating them all into one park. So at this point, our simple request is to allow us to use the funding that's previously been approved to be able to build in 4 other parks a pickleball court in each one of them. So that's the summary of our request. We appreciate the funding that's been granted, and we're just making that small modification so we can serve better.
I have a question for you. This has just come to my attention in the last couple days. because of some things that were going on in North Logan. But was this precipitated by any concern about the noise, about pickleball courts in Providence?
That did come up as we were building our master plan. The noise did come up, and we already have 4 in one location, and magnifying from 4 to 8 in that same location and having lights to extend the time was an issue with noise. So that is one of the issues that we came, as well as identifying other parks that would be interested in being able to take that activity closer to our residents. So yes, it's multiple issues.
Is there anticipation about how pickleball courts in those other parks would affect residents? Are residents close by? Is that going to become an issue?
I don't believe so. When you're talking 4 pickleball courts and playing all at the same time, you're talking a different volume and different noise level than when you're talking 1 in a isolated park. And some of the other ones have more space that we could service. So we don't believe it will be a sound. But having 8 in the same spot, going from 4 to 8, we did feel like that would magnify the problem we would have.
The reason that I asked this is because of what came to my attention happening in North Logan as they started discovering this, the residents right next to our park there. But it made me wonder if we need to be really careful in putting and funding pickleball courts to make sure that they are far enough away from residents' homes, so that we don't get into a situation where we have to come back and mitigate after we've put them in. And so you're confident that where you want to place those in Providence, that they're far enough away?
We are looking specifically to address that. We have put in the court that we have put in a sound barrier already and have mitigated that up to this point. So yes, we're conscious of that, and we'll work to address that as we place. So.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions?
No, I would move approval.
Second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the request from Providence to change the location of where they're using the wraps for their pickleball courts. Any further discussion?
This doesn't extend the deadline that they still have to have it done. It's just.
Right,
So
or the funding, it's all the same
That was my
funding.
question. When are you gonna start it, and when is your
This year.
funding expire?
It was in the,
Our intention is to start at this, well, as soon as we get approval on everything, we'll start sending it out for, what's the word I'm looking for? Bids. And then we'll get started as soon as we can. So, as soon as we get bids back, and we'll get rolling on it. So we have, I put in there the locations, and we feel that those are pretty good. So we've got locations picked out and plan to get started as soon as we get approval.
I didn't read it because when I saw the heading of it, I was in favor of them, but I didn't read the information as to the extension and when you're supposed to have it completed. Each one of those wrap stacks has a
2 years.
deadline on it, and so it's at the end of this year you're supposed to be.
Yeah, we'll be up the end of this year, and we hope to have them in and done by the end of the year.
It's a very, very popular thing. I had a guy in my home telling me all about the pickleball. He lives here in Cache Valley, but he goes to winter in California, and he said it's a big thing in California, and so it's getting to be big everywhere. Everybody enjoys it.
Yeah, it's a good family game, so.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we don't have any department or committee reports. Oh, I forgot about our public hearings at 5:30. Oopsies, sorry about that. I don't have Barbara here. She pokes me when I forget things, and I should have asked Carl to poke me. So my apologies on that. So we'll move to our public hearings, and the first public hearing is Resolution 2021-07, a resolution authorizing conveyance of real property in North Logan. And this is, this is a property that is, if you're familiar with where Green Canyon High School is, and there's a roundabout on the north of it, this is the northwest corner, right there on, I guess that's 3100 North. So, David, can you give us an update on this sale? Do you have any details for us?
I don't have an update on it, other than what you just said.
Okay. Okay, well,
Yeah, there's, the county attorney's office has been handling this. Aaron,
you're not familiar with it.
This is one that we've been working on, it's all approved, and it was supposed to have occurred by the end of February. But,
Pending a public hearing.
you know, so,
yeah, the people making the purchase requested to move it to May, so that's why it was bumped. I think that was for tax reasons.
Okay. Well, we have this scheduled as a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to comment on this sale?
move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we will move then to a public hearing regarding Resolution 2021-05, and this was, we carried this over from last time, a resolution appointing 2 additional members to the Cache County Drainage District Number 6 Board of Trustees. And last time we heard from 2 of those members, and I believe this person was out of town, is that right? But I believe Bill Wright is here and wanted to address the council. Is he here? Okay, maybe not. Okay. All right. Is there anyone who wanted to comment on appointing these additional members to the Drainage District Number 6? Don't all jump up at once. Entertain a motion to close.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to close that public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will now move to public hearing on Resolution 2021-08. And this is a resolution ratifying appointments to the Cache County Drainage Districts Number 3, Number 4, and Number 5 Boards of Trustees. And I believe that there's 3 positions and 3 people seeking 3 positions. Is that correct? Am I remembering correctly?
Yep.
Okay. On each board, Are any of those seeking those appointments here? Would you like to speak to the council?
I'd like them to speak.
Yeah.
Get up there, Adam.
So if you'll come forward and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourselves and why you would like to be on the Drainage District Board.
I'm Adam Johnson. I'm from Drainage District Number 4. I live right in the district. The main artery of the drainage system goes through our family farm and right next to my home. I've been part of that board for probably 10 years now, and so I'll continue to serve if so desired. Anthony Hall has also been a member of our board, and he wasn't able to be here tonight, but he says that he is willing to commit. And then Robert Barlow is here with me also, who's also served for a number of years. So,
Plenty.
yes.
Thank you.
We're going to have to hear from Mr. Barlow too,
Yeah.
because we're not sure if we're approving unless we address it.
Well, my name's Robert Barlow. I've lived in the drainage district as well. When they said, why do you want to do it? I want water running out of Lewiston in the drain system, not through my home. So that's why I have an interest in making sure the water goes where it needs to go properly. So hope I can continue to do that.
That's a good explanation.
Yeah, that about covers it. Thank you. Any questions for these gentlemen? No? Dave, do you see any others? It seems like you are familiar with some of them.
I don't know, my eyes are bad right now.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to comment about these drainage district appointments?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, we are now on item 10D. Okay, this is a public hearing on ordinance 2021-11. We call it the Riggs rezone. It's a request to rezone 12.55 acres from agricultural A10 to the rural 5 or RU5, located at about 100, these are always tricky to say, 1300 north, 8800 west, near Clarkston. Is Chris here that he can, Chris, can you come and give us a little bit of a heads up about what this is before we open it up?
Thanks for your patience there. I wanted to get that map up so we could have it for context. As you pointed out, Madam Chairwoman, the request is for a rezone from the A10 zone to the RU5 zone. Some of the primary issues when the Planning Commission reviewed this were related to the access. So that's a county road to the north of Clarkston. It's currently maintained by the city of Clarkston through agreement with the county. The county may go out there most likely in the summertime. I'd have to confirm with them when they're doing their own maintenance on that road, but the city of Clarkston helps quite a bit with the winter maintenance, I believe. This gives them the ability to have, instead of one home on the property, to have two homes on the property. It would require a change in some maintenance for the county as they go out there. It would require improvement of the roadway at further on, not the rezone itself, but when they came forward to divide the property, it would require some additional improvements. This property has been reviewed previously. I think it came to this body. I'm trying to remember. Maybe just the Planning Commission. Don't know if you've seen it before. I apologize, I don't recall. But the big change there is related to those road issues and the improvement of the road, maintenance of the road. And the other piece that's important here is, as you look to your packet, you can kind of see what's on that map that shows you what zoning's around it, what properties are around there. There's a couple houses just south, but there's not much north of it until you get north to the landfill, and then the Idaho line is probably 4 or 5 miles north of there. There was a request, and you'll see the letter there from Clarkston Town. They had some questions and concerns about the placement of the RU5 zone on the property. I'd like to read that if I may. It's Exhibit A, Attachment B, Public Comment Number 1 in your packet. Their comment from Clarkston reads as follows, Thank you for contacting us regarding the above rezone request. Clarkston Town has a few concerns on the proposed change to an RU5 zone. Then they refer to our code, specifically under the RU5 zone. It points to the pieces that the Planning Commission and staff's packet points to when we refer to this zone. It states that the RU5 zone is to allow for residential estate development in low density pattern. that can allow for rural subdivisions and smaller scale agricultural uses. This type of development should be located and designed not to unreasonably impede adjacent agricultural uses, nor to unreasonably conflict with the development standards of adjacent municipalities. Number 2 there, to implement the policies of Cache Countywide Comprehensive Plan, including those regarding agricultural promotion, prime farmlands, improved roadways, density-based residential standards, clustering, moderate-income housing, and municipal standards. Number 3, this zone must be appropriately served by suitable public roads, have access to the necessary water and utilities, and have adequate provision of public services. Their letter continues, Clarkston Town would like to have addressed the road to the property, 8600 West. It is designated as undeveloped. Clarkston Town currently provides snow removal to the 2 existing homes on 8600 West located in the county. I can show you those here if that's helpful. You can see both homes here, and the property we're referring to is just north of those.
Is the road paved up to there?
The road is paved to the homes, and the turnaround for the winter maintenance is at this house. As you continue north, there is not active winter maintenance beyond those homes. And it's a gravel road, gravel dirt road.
They would have to pave it if they developed it.
Correct. I'll continue with that letter. As the traffic and density on this road increase, it would cause an increase in resources from Clarkston Town. We would request that if this rezone is approved, that the county will now provide snow removal for the entire road outside Clarkston Town limits. Furthermore, we do not believe this property has adequate access to other public services such as emergency and fire. Again, this would be an increased burden on our resources from Clarkston Town to provide these types of services. As your staff report points out, there are many other A10 properties surrounding this. If this rezone is approved, we would expect the county is ready to provide services to a much larger area surrounding Clarkston, as these A10 properties also rezone. Currently, Clarkston is in the process of developing an annexation policy plan. Once this plan is approved, any land annexed into Clarkston Town will be zoned A10. This rezone would conflict with the development standards of our municipality. We realize this is not currently in place, but are trying to be forward-thinking to not overwhelm our municipality. There was also a letter, an email, I believe, forwarded by Mayor Hidalgo, and he points out some additional pieces here. I'm going to read a portion of that. I think it's the second or third sentence. It says, I would also like to add that in the findings of fact, it noted on page 3, section B, 5C, that the zone must be appropriately served by and have access to necessary water. It is important to understand that both homes in the vicinity of the property being considered have struggled to maintain adequate water for basic needs. Both have approached Clarkston to allow them to hook to our water system, but as with others around the vicinity of Clarkston, have been denied. The one home has re-drilled their well 3 times and still only obtains water to barely meet their needs. In nearly every case, county landowners and Clarkston request that Clarkston provide water to them because well production is not what was expected or costs are too expensive. I realize that property owners have their rights, but unfortunately some of them are only, well, I'll leave it there. The emphasis on the water rights and water issues are pertinent, I think, to your consideration for this rezone request. Historically, as staff, we've kind of taken a hands-off approach, well, more recently, on rezone requests for the RU2 and RU5 zone, and there's some long precedent that precedes most of the council members. We're happy to make recommendations. Our initial recommendation from the beginning is to deny rezone requests for RU2 and RU5 zone because they're not supported. You'll recall that we had a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and Council, it's probably been 2 years now, it goes quick, and considered sunsetting those zoning options because there was consistent issues. I think over the last 2 years, the county council has denied nearly every rezone request for RU2 and RU5 zones, with maybe one exception. And there's been about 10 requests. So from a staff standpoint, we haven't changed a whole lot on what we would recommend until we have strong support for those zones, where they need to occur, and where they would be appropriately served. We don't have great direction on that. There was some original discussion at the time, not put into code or anything, that said we want them to be close to the cities, but there was no other direction beside that. So as staff, we've taken that general approach that let's get some other things in place, and then we can have better responses to these requests. So as staff, nothing's changed. We'd make that same recommendation. But the Planning Commission's recommendation in this is contrary to that. They've made a recommendation for approval with the noted conclusions with your packet. That's staff's report, but I'm sure you want to do your hearing. I'm happy to take questions later.
Thank you, Chris. So this is a public hearing, and is there anyone here who wants to comment on this rezone? Thanks. Please come to the mic and state your name.
So my name is Dallin Riggs, and I am the property owner. But I actually wanted to just bring up one point that's in the staff report that maybe I can bring up some more pertinent information. But one of the reasons for a potential denial for this rezone is that the property is not appropriately served by an adequate provision of public services. My wife and I, we've always dreamed of building a house with a septic system and a propane tank and a well. And as of September 2020, we've worked with the Bear River Health Department and have received a permit for a septic system. We have a well permit, and I have been in touch with Rocky Mountain Power to determine, what it would cost me to pull power to the parcel. And when I say pull power, I'm not talking hundreds of yards. We're talking 100 to 200 feet from the adjacent house across the street. And so, and I've also reached out to contractors to determine, what it would take to pave this road to improve it so that, the winter maintenance along this road would be suitable. And, as the property owner, I understand what it's going to take to develop the property. And I think, obviously I think that it is doable. But, along with that, we're requesting a rezone to a rural 5, and just across the street, there's a house on a parcel that's only 0.89 acres. And then adjacent to that, there's another house it's on a parcel that's 4.53 acres. And so if we were to rezone this, the density of this parcel would actually be less than the surrounding buildings. And so that's kind of all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riggs. Is there anyone else?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we have this later on our agenda, as you probably know. We can talk about it. We'll probably discuss it then. Okay, we are at 10E, a public hearing, ordinance 2021-12, Brian Hansen rezone. Request to rezone 2.17 acres from the agricultural A10 zone to the commercial C zone located at 1015 East, 12600 North Cove. Chris, do you have some information or report for that for us?
As you've stated, this request is for a rezone for that 2.17 acres there on the highway. If you've been north there, you've probably seen typically boulders or cold storage for gravel or whatnot. There's a little kind of a scale on the south end in the building there. Their request is to rezone that property to the commercial zone to allow some other commercial activities on the property. In reviewing that, let me turn my page here. I think the main thing that we looked at with the Planning Commission, they were trying to sort out some of the uses that are occurring on the property currently. That would be handled at a later time. There's a lot of history in the staff report of what's been on the property. I think there was some confusion at the Planning Commission meeting about that as we rehearsed what had occurred presently. There may need to be some cleanup with the existing permitting, but that's certainly possible as they update their zoning. As you look at the access, you can see that they're either going to have to access off of the highway. There's their current access comes across. I'm going to zoom in just a tad with that scale on the south end. There we go. 12600 north. You can see the angle across and then on the highway. That's something that would be discussed at a later time with the conditional use permit review. They'd need to visit with UDOT and have a discussion about what needs to happen with that access, whether it needs to be shared. The property also touches on a county road on the north end, but I think the grade plays a role in why they're on the south end with that scale. So it's just more of a question of what works at the site. The request to move it to commercial, in reviewing it with the Planning Commission, there weren't a lot of hurdles in having that or considering that. They've made a recommendation for approval for a commercial zone at that location. I know that the property is intended future for a kennel, a commercial kennel, to be at that location. But do be aware as you make those rezones and consider, I think it's on page 2, some of the additional uses that come with a commercial zone. You can see those listed there. Ag manufacturing, commercial businesses, commercial kennel in this case, self-service storage facilities, general vehicle repair, medical services facilities, human care services, transient lodging, restaurant, sexually oriented businesses, educational facilities. So we like to remind you of those pieces because as you make those rezones, as you're aware, they stick with the land, and if the use doesn't work short-term, long-term, another use could come in and replace it. So with those things in mind, is if the commercial zone makes sense here, the Planning Commission thinks it does, and they've made that recommendation for approval.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
I just always have to laugh that the infamous strip club comes up.
I was going to say the Cove gets their first strip joint.
In Cove, of all places. There we go.
All right. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to comment on this rezone? Want to come forward to the mic and state your name and address the council?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Hansen, and I'm the one that's leading this process as well, and I'm the one that's going to be running the kennel. And if you know anything about the Allens in Cove, they are not going to give up their land very easily, and the land is currently owned by Allen Gravel. So it's not going to be going to a strip club anytime soon. I can promise you that.
The Allens are pretty iffy.
They are pretty iffy, but if you know Claire Allen, he's not going to let that happen. Not going to let that happen. So yeah, the process right now is, it is currently taxed commercially, and so with us using 12% of that land as a kennel, we didn't think it'd be a huge ask of anybody to get it commercially zoned, just because we want to add a kennel to the county. It's going to have a huge impact for the county. There's a lot of dogs, a lot of processes that I've helped with rehoming, and if we can get a dog kennel in this process, in this county, that can help others without dogs having to go to a humane society or getting put down or just going into the woods and letting them go. This last year was pretty rough for the dogs, and if there's a process that they can take their dog to while they go to work and provide for their families, that we can take their dogs in we can ease that process for them. Less dogs to be put down, less dogs to be lost, and I will have to be less responsible for other dogs and rehoming them. So that's the hopes here.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm here if there's any questions. I have no comments unless you have questions, but there may be supposed to have questions.
Does anyone have questions on this?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, I'll take that. It's probably a no. So it's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And this is further down on our agenda as well that we can be talking about it. So, okay, we are 10F, Public Hearing Ordinance 2021-13, Creekside Estates rezone. Request to rezone 31.67 acres from the agricultural A10 zone to the rural RU2 zone located at 5625 North, 800 West near Smithfield. Chris, you have something for us on that?
Yes.
Thank you.
As you look at the map, the purple area you can see is Smithfield City, and 800 West is right on that border here. The Creekside Estates is an existing subdivision. North line here, south line comes down to here. And proximate to that, you can see in your staff report, but I'll turn it on here also. I hope I can find it quickly. Maybe not. There it is. So these are the county zoning layers just outside the city. South of 218, you can see that orange color. That's zone RU2. So you'll see that there are 3 different subdivisions there that have been zoned RU2. This is a request to rezone this A10 parcel from A10 to RU2 zone to allow them to have additional, let's see, I forget the number of lots, a maximum of 15 lots at that rate of 1 unit per 2 acre density. We have reached out to Smithfield City. They did not have comment specific to opposing or supporting the proposal. They previously, when they put the original subdivision in, had to improve 800 West to meet the city standard. And when they put in that private road, they had to meet the county standard that supplies access or provides access to the city or to the Creekside Estates. Let me turn that back off now. Subdivision. And those lots, you can see that road comes in here with a turnaround, and these other lots have access off of 800 West. At the time when they did that subdivision, we had some of the road standards in place and the resolution 2015-20, which restricted some of the maintenance issues tied to that, which no longer is in place. So some of those issues aren't present anymore. The proposal as they provide it, would give them those additional lots. They have 7 existing presently, so they could have up to 8 more. I don't know that that's their intent, but they could have up to 8 more in that location.
There's no homes currently built in this.
I think there are.
Are there
And
some?
I don't recall now which parcels have homes on them. I should check.
Okay.
I think that it may be on our map. Let me confirm if it's on the map at all here. It's not. But I know that there are some that have been built or are in process of being built. So I apologize that's not there, but it is. They do have home or 2 there.
Okay.
3 homes. Thank you. So far as Planning Commission and staff's review, there weren't any major issues with the proposal. Staff has recommended, or not staff, but Planning Commission has recommended approval of the rezone to the RU2 zone. It seems to be in conformance with what's there, and there's no comment from Smithfield to oppose it. So there wasn't a strong feeling either way. That's
Thank you,
staff's
Chris.
report.
Thank you.
Question, why is it that they haven't sought annexation into Smithfield?
That discussion has been had with Smithfield, and Smithfield's not interested in annexing to the west presently. Well, let's just say there's been some different conversations from Smithfield, because they just annexed to the west north of this location.
Sure did.
But in this location, they're not interested.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't there an announcement that exacerbates the development pressure in Smithfield?
Yeah.
If you want to go to the microphone.
So that's a great question, and we just, there wasn't a clarity on Smithfield's side as what they want to do, other than there was no comment.
So,
There's,
well,
there's more to the story, but it's not my part to say.
I think we'd like to hear from you.
It is a public hearing, so you can come up and make a comment. Okay, well. Please state your name for the record.
Lamont Polson. I live close to this. The property that, Chris, you're talking about that was annexed, that's on the west side of 800, was when they needed to annex the property. Their plans were, which is visionary, to build on that. Eventually, it happened to be an A10, but the pump station they needed for the part in the city, they put down on 12, not quite 12, but part way down. That precipitated the need to annex that 30 acres in, which is right there. So it was interesting to me to hear about Smithfield not wanting to annex west, but if that helps, that's the property.
Thanks, Lamont. Okay, any other? Oh, great.
Good evening. I'm Andy Rasmussen. I'm one of the owners of the Creekside Estates and the agent acting on behalf of us property owners. So, yeah, our intention here is, as we're looking at this property, it's a poster child for an RU2 designation because we're right against Smithfield City. As we went into first originally subdivide this and develop it to put, as was mentioned, there's currently 3 homes under development, a couple planned here in the future. This is it required lots of improvements to work with Smithfield City, but currently where Smithfield City's at, they don't have the capability to provide services to this property. We've already looked at possibility of annexation, and they're not interested, and the cost would be phenomenal. As mentioned, we don't have the budget that Visionary does to be able to put in a lift station and to pump a significant amount of utilities and such. So our goal here is really, again, to maintain the ag type fill, small, or not this increased density that Visionary's brought north of this, but rather to maintain some larger lots and some nice acreage down in that, maintaining a county fill, but obviously being in the annexation of Smithfield City, that's always going to be the future. This is within walking distance of Birch Creek Elementary, and if the rumors are correct, of a temple not far away. So it really lays out well for being able to develop this. Our goal is not to throw up 8 more lots. There's already 7 designated. Our goal is really to be able to maybe develop right off 8th West there right now. So really, again, this is in line very well with what's out there. Some of the subdivisions north of this were actually annexed in several years ago and weren't even butted up against Smithfield City at the time. So we're really just being in line with what's happened to the north of us with 2 other subdivisions. So I feel, and would hope that based on that information that this would be allowed to rezone to RU2 to maintain that ag fill of the area. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Rasmussen. Any other comments?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our final public hearing is ordinance 2021-14, small-scale slaughter facility And this is regarding an amendment to the Cache County Land Use Code, Title 17.07 and 17.09, regarding a new use-related definition to be identified as 6150 small-scale slaughter facility. And Chris, can you tell us about this?
As most of you are aware, there's been a pretty significant need for this type of facility. Previously, this came before you in the form of a rezone that someone was pursuing to allow this type of facility to exist because our code didn't allow it to exist unless it was commercial or industrially zoned. That was denied because the zoning didn't make sense. And then the council gave direction to staff to track down some more information and consider a new use type that would facilitate this type of use. And so we did a fair bit of research. We've worked with the Planning Commission. We've worked with even the previous applicant. We visited a slaughter facility to see how it was operating to get some better understanding of what was there. All of that was very informative. And we worked through a variety of code language here. This is probably the 5th version of what we were considering. So that's to you now. When did this start, Paul? Probably end of last year.
Oh, yeah.
That I was chastised to hurry and get it done.
You did a good job, Chris.
Well, it takes a while to get through those.
Not at all. You did fantastic.
But there is a real need there, and we heard that in visiting with the other facility outside of Ogden in Weber County. And we've heard it from multiple other facilities. And what you'll see here is the primary issue that we touched on that I probably should make you aware of, 2 things. We're relying pretty heavily on the state and the service that's provided by the state and required by the state for this type of facility and the inspection of when they kill animals and when they slaughter the animal. So the state inspector is looking at that. They have their own requirements that they have to meet. If the facility is not clean, they have to clean it before they get to do anything. And those in this case, the most they could really be there is probably once or twice a week to visit this size of facility. Probably twice a week is realistic. But it allows the transition between what would someone be doing their own slaughtering, or someone would come to their property with the remote thing like Horlockers does, and the full-on Miller scale slaughter facility. And so this gives us somewhere in between. The maximum here would be 1,500 animal units. As perspective, Miller's does about 2,300 animal units per day. This would be 1,500 animal units per year. That gives you maybe about 20 units per week, depending on the week. That gives you around, that'll give you around 1,300 to do that. So it allows a little bit of room for growth. We didn't want, the Planning Commission's comment was we don't want to stifle them from being able to do what they need to do. So we gave an additional 300 and felt like that was still a reasonable number, not excessive. I think the most revealing part is when we went to visit the facility outside of Ogden. It was very clean. There was no odor. Those were kind of the big impacts that we were concerned with as a Planning Commission and as staff, is how do you address these impacts if this is moved forward as a conditional use permit? So again, this will move forward as a conditional use permit. So if there were additional concerns or known issues, those would be addressed also as imposed conditions.
This is for 2 acres, right? You have to have 2 acres, and you can
Yes.
do it in a A10 or a forest zone.
Yep, 2 acres or larger in size. And I'm skipping over a lot of this, I'm sorry, giving you kind of the overview. But maybe if that's helpful, I'll touch through that section of code that was drafted. Some of the key pieces there in the code itself is that there's slaughtering, skinning, and preparing of livestock and poultry by humane means for the purpose of human consumption, which is done at a place other than a licensed slaughtering house by a person who is not the owner of the animal. So that's one big key piece there that this addresses, that these are not the owners of the animals. The additional requirements are some of the things we saw with other jurisdictions and also with the place we visited that made it appear to be successful. First, they have to be licensed as farm custom slaughtering is defined by the state. So if they aren't licensed by the state, they're not going to be functioning because we're relying on them for that inspection component. They must meet any of the related state requirements that apply prior to operation. We did tie it back to ag. It has to qualify as land under agricultural use that is actively devoted to agriculture as defined by the Farmland Assessment Act. Typically, that's going to point to a 5-acre minimum size, or it can be attached to it could be a smaller parcel, say this is 2-acre size, if it's attached to a larger acreage. That would still qualify under that Assessment Act. Number 3, we referenced the 2-acre, has to be a legal parcel, 2 acres or larger in size. And if it is on a parcel that it's less than 2 acres in size, it's still contiguous to legal parcels under the same ownership as a parcel where the facility is located that would combine with the initial parcel, they reach that acreage of 2 or more acres in size. That was a mouthful. We rewrote that a couple different times to try and make it read better, and that's as best we could get it to convey that. So if you have any recommendations or see something simple to fix it, we're more than willing to make an adjustment there. Number 4, all processing activities and processing structures associated with this use must be set back a minimum of 50 feet from all property lines. That's there to help reduce some of the impact that may be associated with smell. It may also help with when they're killing the animals. The only thing I've thought of since we've done this is the place that we visited. His comment was their house is fairly proximate to his location. He said they wish maybe they're going to be building a screen so that the neighbor, some poor kid, doesn't wander out on the porch and see when the cow gets shot. Might be a little traumatic. But they're in ag lands. Most of these kids probably are aware of that. But it was a worthy consideration. Number 5 identifies this maximum of 1,500 animal units to be slaughtered or processed on an annual basis. So something that the commission really chewed on was how are we going to limit the impact? And it really came down to this. They looked at maybe, is it parcel size? Is it facility size? What is the most critical piece to limit the impact? And it was the number of units processed in a given year.
Did they have on that piece, one of my favorites saying is all animals are equal, some are more equal than others if you're not careful, right? But it says livestock and poultry. It seems like you can chew up your 1,500 really quick with a bunch of chickens. Did they take that into account, that a cow is, you don't want to use it up on your small stuff?
Yeah, so
the discussion around that?
Yeah, animal units are related to, it's a specific definition under federal and state code. It's essentially the equivalent, someone else tell me about the size of a heifer, a full-grown heifer. Does that sound right?
One animal unit is a cow and calf, basically.
And a calf, correct.
Yes, and so basically you'd almost have 7 sheep, I believe, for one animal unit.
Okay, so it's 1,500 units, but they divide those up as not just an animal. Okay, perfect.
One animal unit is different for each species.
Okay, perfect.
Correct. It's all based.
The basis is a cow and a calf, and so from there on, you have to make a basis of how many sheep make a cow, how many pigs make a cow.
It's roughly 1,000 pounds. Does that sound right? It's roughly 1,000, maybe 1,100 pounds, somewhere in there.
That would answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of chickens.
The other concern was the stink from the waste, and the offal is what that's called. And what this specific slaughterhouse did is within 24 hours he'd removed everything off the property related to anything that's going to decay and start to smell. So he works with someone who comes to remove that and take it off. If they get held up, he takes it straight to the dump. That's where it goes. So we made that a requirement that it had to be removed from the property within 24 hours to eliminate that possible impact. That seemed like a reasonable request, and for his standpoint, he said, for me to run a business and for people wanting to come back here and use me as a business, I can't smell like that. I have to have a clean operation for them to ever want to come back and continue to use me. So that seemed to make good sense from a practical standpoint and from a code standpoint. So that was included as an additional requirement. We did add some additional information there. If stuff happens, if you can't get it off the property, it has to be in a refrigerated area. So it reduces the likelihood of the impact until it's removed. There isn't a time limit set for that. That's left to them to remove it. So if there were an impact specific, it would probably qualify under this code as a nuisance and have to be addressed more likely as an enforcement issue if there was a bad actor on the part of the property owner, if they didn't want to comply. We did look over which zones were applicable. It seemed to make most sense in the A10 zone and the FR40 zone. We see some of these similar to the Summers property where they have a bit of a ranch out on the south end where people can come and shoot animal and have it processed on the site. And so that seemed to make sense in those FR40 and A10 zones for similar circumstances. I've included a bunch of other information here about the state, about some of the things we've looked at, similar uses and jurisdictions. I'm happy to talk about that later if you have more questions specific to those items. But that's staff's report if you wanted to address a public hearing.
Thank you, Chris. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to comment on this new code section? A reminder to state your name and address the council rather than the audience.
My name's Forrest Olson. I'm the previous applicant for the rezone for this. At first, I just want to say thank everybody for all the hard work that they've put into this. Chris, he's worth his weight in gold for everything he's done. He's an amazing man for all the research he's done. Just to answer some things that I heard were brought up. There's certain ways to track certain things like the animal units that people were talking about. First of all, with a difference between poultry and the other animals, you actually have to have different licensing for poultry versus the other animals. So when you do a facility, like you either have to choose you're doing poultry or you're doing the others. So with that, and it does correlate with like, I believe it is 7 sheep to the 1 cow thing, but also if you want to be able to track that, which is probably going to be easier for you guys, the state regulates the tracking very heavily. For each animal, there requires to be a brand inspection and a tag and a lot number for each animal that goes through each facility during a custom slaughter shop, which this kind of goes along with. So once a month, a tag for every animal that went through that facility has to go in. And if any animal goes through that facility and is caught without that number or that tag, the facility will immediately be shut down. So that's one thing that I think people need to do. And also he was talking about the refrigerated room that he was talking about. The state requires each slaughter facility for these small scales, you have to have what's called an inedibles room. Whether you use it or not, it has to be there because the things you were talking about, the state requires you to get rid of those, the offal and those things within 24 hours. And if you can't get rid of it within 24 hours, you have to use the inedible room to keep it away. Once again, with the whole thing with people wondering if you're going to see it, if a kid is going to see an animal slaughtered and be mortified, you know, we brought up, well, it's an ag zone, they should understand that, but also slaughter facilities have to be enclosed. If you're doing a slaughter facility, I can't just bring them out in the middle of my parking lot and dispatch them there and let everybody see. No, it's going to have to be an enclosed facility where somebody is there to watch it and observe it to make sure everything is going correctly and that it's not available view to the public eye. We're getting hard pressed for this. I just want to let everybody know, like, the problem hasn't gotten better, obviously, and Chris has done an amazing job with how fast he's worked on this. When we first came with this for the rezone, everybody was between 6 months to a year out to get a beef slaughtered. Now you're a year to 2.5 years out, depending on where you go to get a beef slaughtered. But I'd like to thank all your appreciation, all the hard work and all the commitment you guys have given to this, and I'm willing to answer any questions if anybody has any about this.
Really quick, so that 1,500 unit, that is not handcuffing you at all. I mean, that gives you plenty of leeway. We're not overburdening you at the county level at all.
Not at all. So that allows for pretty good expansion. And the good part is about that 1,500 unit, it does 2 things. It allows you to grow because obviously with the ratio from sheep to beef, the 1,500 unit is basically you base that off of a beef, and then a pig is like 2 or 3 depending on the size of the animal, and then sheep is usually 7. So it doesn't handcuff you really at all on any of that issue. But the good part is with that limiting that, like he said, it helps us keep what Cache County seems to want, keeping things on that small scale. Because you don't it allows me to grow to big enough to be able to make sure if we need to help this problem even further, I can grow to be able to do that. But it also isn't allowing me to come in and go, okay, we're making another JBS, here we go. It keeps me, it not only helps me expand, but it also helps you guys keep me in check to make sure that I'm not overreaching what I want to do.
Also, with a facility this size, your labor is usually manageable. As soon as you get, you start getting a bigger volume, then to find labor, to people to come and work, and that is often hard.
Yep. We're in a lucky place to have Bridgerland that has such great people teaching people to do this, that this industry, it's not a dying industry, but it's just, everybody out there in the workforce knows it's hard to find people now that are willing to accomplish and work for a living. And we have a great opportunity here to be able to find that. Sweet. Thank you guys so much.
Best part of that is I found out there's an inedible room. My wife always says that they put everything in hot dogs when I'm eating them, so now I can say that's not true.
I don't know about that. I've worked at a meat plant, so.
So,
As they say, even the squeal is the only thing not used.
Are we gonna have a sampling room there where you'll cook a few steaks on?
Well, as soon as I get the smoker going, you bet.
You can come down and sample. All right.
Is there anyone else who wants to comment on this?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second that.
Moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that concludes our lengthy, that's like the most public hearings we've had in a long time. That concludes our public hearings, and we will move to pending action, number 11. We decided to put this on the agenda last time, but this is the Cache Valley Compost Rezone, which Logan City was requesting us to change the county zoning map to apply a public infrastructure overlay zone to 47-acre parcel in the agricultural A10 zone. Logan City has withdrawn that application, and that letter from Environmental Director Isa Hamed should be in your packet. I think you guys already know about that because as it came through, I let you know, but wanted to let the public know that that has been withdrawn and ask that that letter be included in the minutes as well, so we have that on record. Executive Zook and I met with Mr. Hamed about, and I hope I'm saying his name right. I think I always mispronounce it, sorry.
I think it's Hamoud.
Hamoud, thank you. I'm terrible. Got to learn that. We met with him, and it appears to us, and David, correct me if I misconstrue anything, that Logan is looking to put this facility at their wastewater treatment plant, and that there may be some cost involved with mitigating wetlands. But that's what I got out of that meeting. Do you agree with that?
Yes, we met with them. They came in to meet with us, and I thought maybe they were going to try to convince us to reconsider, but after discussing it for a while, they ultimately told us that their plan is to put the facility right next to the wastewater plant, which I think is a great solution. It might cost a little bit more, but it's better for transportation. It's an area that's already impacted, and they have land there that won't be used for the wastewater facility, but they might have to mitigate some of the wetland, and that's where the additional cost is. Mr. Hamoud did point out that if there is additional cost for dealing with that wetland, that cost would be passed on to the ratepayers of the solid waste district, which is everybody in the county.
Yep, and that he would be back and request whatever was needed.
Which is what?
Everyone in the county. This was actually a clarification. I didn't realize this until the end of our discussion, but this composting operation is actually being operated by the solid waste department, the Logan Solid Waste Department, not by the wastewater department. And I thought it was going to be a wastewater operation, and they clarified that they plan to do it under the solid waste department, which is what they do now with green waste. And the majority of the materials they'll be processing tonnage-wise will be green waste. even going forward, even after adding the biosolids from the wastewater plant. So whatever additional cost they have for that site, they plan to pass it through solid waste fees.
I'd really love to see when they pass that cost along and show that cost, that they offset it by the decrease in transportation costs that they have by having it on site. So while there'd be maybe a little bit more on the upfront, I think over the course of however many years this is going to be in place, that additional cost will be severely mitigated by the lack of transportation to move it several miles down the road.
For both the bio waste and the green waste.
Yes, exactly.
And those increased fees, though, must be approved by a county council.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, he was aware of that. He said he'd be bringing it to you at whatever point he decides to do that.
So I'd love to see that analysis when it comes to us.
I did pull out a map right then, and I drew. What I did is I pulled up the map or the aerial image of the facility we visited down in Davis County and measured the acreage and doubled that, because his facility should be producing about double that one at full, once it gets to full capacity. And then I measured the land right next to his facility and showed him that it looked to me like he could fit the required number of acreage there without impacting the wetland. And he said he felt like they would still have to impact the wetland, but in my mind, it looks like it should be minimal.
Yeah, I agree with that. It did look like it would be very minimal, so. Thank you, David. So the council doesn't need to take action on that. We just left it on the agenda so that we could notify all interested parties and you guys could know about that. So we will move to items 12, initial proposals for consideration of action. The first item is ordinance 2021-11, the Riggs rezone. And council, do you want to discuss, take any action on this item?
Well, the big question that is in my mind on the Riggs rezone is what's been shared with us, that there's very limited water out in that area if they're planning on putting in a well. But then at the same time, that's not for us to decide as to whether or not, you know, they're going to be able to get any water. That's between them and the state. And so my whole concern in the rezone hasn't really got anything that we can address in that, and that's the water.
The Planning Commission also listened to the applicant. Now that we're on the new road manual, this guy was very much upfront and understanding the cost of the road and everything else. So, and I also think Matt addressed the issue between Clarkston and the county as far as road maintenance or snow removal. Is that correct?
Yeah, Clarkston's letter did, you want me to come up?
Yeah, come up so we can, it'll be easier to hear you. Thanks, Matt.
Clarkston's letter did talk about they provide the snow maintenance for that road. The county does provide snow maintenance for that road. In a lot of the small cities, you know, you kind of share the load, so there's probably times where Clarkston might beat the county there, but the county's still providing the snow removal and maintenance to that road, salting it, doing that type of work, so. But yeah, the county, and then the summer maintenance is provided by the county as well, so.
Thanks, Matt.
Well, in the interest of moving things along, I'd like to waive the rules and make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-11, the Riggs rezone.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to waive the rules and approve the Riggs rezone. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So that area will be rezoned. Okay, we will move to ordinance 2021-12, the Brian Hansen rezone. Council, what would you like to do there?
Again, I'll comment in the planning and zoning. It was provided that there's not much change going to happen onto this property. The only thing that's really going to go there is the kennel, and so that needed the commercial side. So Planning Commission felt that, and we discussed access roads and everything else, and how they were going to get there, so they felt it was in a reasonable request.
Yeah, I don't think that changes the characteristics of that property much at all and provides a needed service. So following Carl's lead in the interest of moving things along, I propose that we waive the rules and approve ordinance 2021-12.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 2021-12, the Brian Hanson rezone. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, next is 2021-13, the Creekside Estates rezone.
Well, again, I think all the issues were addressed, were of concern, and no discussion apparently. I'll make a motion, waive the rules and approve ordinance 2021-13, Creekside Estates rezone.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance 2021-13, the Creekside Estates rezone. All in favor? Aye.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment.
Little comment.
You can't do it after we vote.
No, we can have a discussion.
You didn't ask for comment.
I didn't, so that's true. So
Could you?
I'll take your point of order. I forgot to ask for further discussion. Go ahead,
I
Dave.
appreciate that. It'll be short.
That's okay.
To me, we're building a wall right up to Smithfield, right on that west side. You know, and I guess they themselves, Smithfield, saying, hey, we have no interest to go west. But I've never known a city that went so far east and then says, now where do we go? And so they end up going west. And once they don't, if they don't go annex and west, and if there is that wall right there, then those people never want to come in, and then it becomes a big battle and a big cost later as to what they're going to do. RU2 down there, I think we're overdoing it, even in that area. I think that's just it's such a sieve area right through there. It's all gravel, and when one flushes, one drinks. And it's kind of you need to be careful about those things, but that's all to do with Bear River Health. But I think we're way overdoing the density on RU2, and I'm not in favor of going to that extreme in that area. So.
Thank you, Dave. Gordy, was there something you wanted to add?
Well, I know when I first read this about this rezone, I thought we have been champion that we turned down these RU2 zones. But when we did discuss the RU2 zones many years ago, that was one of the things that we said would possibly allow us to approve an RU2 zone as it was adjacent to a city. And this one here is adjacent to a city, and so then I think in my mind you can justify it. I just feel bad about all those other individuals that have land that are further out and we turn them down. But I think they need to realize that the reason why this one gets approved and the other ones further out do not is because they don't fit right in with the city. I'm not exactly sure what the reasoning for Smithfield is, because all the development that's going on in the valley, and they're more than happy to approve subdivisions up on the east side, but I don't know the reasoning on the west side. I guess it's the wrong side of the tracks, and that's not very kind to say, but I don't know what their reasoning is. But I am somewhat in support of this simply because it is an RU2 zone request right by the city, and the city has turned them down. And that, I think, would qualify from the council's point of view, that if they are right on the border of the city don't want to have anything to do with them, then that should be a consideration. If it was 5 miles further to the west, then I'd say no.
I did have one other question on the road. The road up there, that 800 west, again, who is going to take over maintenance of that road?
800 west is the city's road.
All the way to that
To the highway to the property.
To the subdivision.
You have to, I think you go across a bridge or something there. It's all the cities.
So we can actually wash our hands of that road from the county in those sections?
I don't think they got dirty. But yes.
Okay.
That's the city's responsibility.
I don't want this half of the road, you know, is theirs and half of it's ours. And,
It's all theirs, 100%.
okay, thank you.
And those,
I would agree with Dave on the number, but the consistency next to a municipality is what the Planning Commission had to give weight to. I mean, we've tried to watch the numbers on RU2s as we've dealt this in the Planning Commission, but at the same time, we need Smithfield to respond to the county when they ask about what's going on next to them. It would be nice if we had some inclusion there. I mean, it was great Clarkston talked to us about that, but then hopefully we resolved the issue that Clarkston raised on the other one too. So, just some clarification on that side.
I think that's a good point, right? Just like you said, we'd love to see it annexed in, but if the city won't do that when it's right on their doorstep, it puts the property owner in a kind of catch-22 situation. So you don't want to do it, you don't want to leapfrog, but if it's right next door and it seems reasonable to annex in and you don't, well, that's still a great land use that provides a product to the market that is sorely needed with the housing shortage we have. So if we're going to do it, I think this makes sense to do it there, even though your points, Mr. Erickson, are very well taken.
Any further discussion? What I neglected to say.
Sorry about that, Jim.
No, I'm glad you called me on it, Dave. Thank you. Okay, there's a motion to end debate. Any objection? Seeing none, proceed to vote. All in favor of ordinance 2021-13 Creekside Estates rezone, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the chair rules that the motion carries with one no vote. Okay, we will move to ordinance 2021-14. Amendments to Title 17 Small Scale Slaughter Facility. Council, what would you like to do on this?
Can I ask one question, just a Jeopardy question? How many animals do we sell each year at the 4-H sale out of the fair?
Let's see, last year, 400 and, hang on, it'll come, 430 something? 430 something, 38 I believe it was, 438 give or take.
And now it's a record year.
And it was, well, yeah, it was a good year.
It was a
Yeah.
good year, but I don't think it was a record
It was,
year.
it's a
It was
good
a
year. It was
record price.
a record dollar.
Yeah.
Just over $500,000, so.
Man, so just the 4-H sale keeps giving them 25% of what they need, although we've got
Hey,
animal units, they
you know
still
what,
sell
he'd be
pigs,
happy,
so.
he would be happy to take that.
If you want to interject something there, I hate to be a spoke, but this year was probably our highest number of home use
Yeah.
of all the years. So,
Which I think is gonna stay steady.
Yeah. So this is a fantastic thing. And then just one public comment, Chris, fantastic job, fantastic job.
Madam Chair, I'd like to address 2021-14 and we'll waive the rules and make a motion that we go ahead and amend Title 17 for a small-scale slaughter facility.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to waive the rules and approve ordinance 2021-14, the small-scale slaughter facility. Is there any further discussion? I will say, Chris, thank you so much to you and also the Planning Commission for working so hard and so quickly on this. Thank you, job well done. Seeing no further comment, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we'll move to items 12E and 12F, which have to do with making appointments to the drainage districts. Let's see, is there any objection from the council to move these to our next meeting and allow some discussion behind the scenes and have an appointment recommended by our county executive, and then we can
Is there still an appointment still that needs to be made?
there's one of them has 4 people applying for 2 seats, and we've heard, I think, only from 2 of them. And we're waiting an email or something.
That's correct. We were hoping to get some additional information from the other 2 this evening, and then my plan was to meet with Councilmember Erickson and discuss those 4 applicants. However, if he wants to make a recommendation on 2 of them this evening, I'm fine with that.
I'm actually very much in favor of drainage district number 4, 5, and 3, where there were 3 candidates for the 3
Go
spots.
ahead with that one.
That we go ahead and appoint
Okay.
those. And if there's more discussion that needs to happen, you know, in the next couple of weeks for the others, that we could, you know, meet and talk more about that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. That was going to be my next comment, that on those, we have just enough applicants for this.
And we're okay to move forward on those. Okay, I wasn't clear on that. Apologize for that. So on E, the one that's 2 for drainage 6, is there any objection from council for just holding that for our next meeting? Okay, seeing none, we'll move that item number 2, our next meeting. So we'll move to item F, the appointing the drainage districts 3, 4, and 5 Board of Trustees.
Move to approve those, the 3 candidates for each of those, and I've got number 4, we have Adam Johnson, Anthony Hall, Robert Barlow. Number 5, Cade Tarbett, Brad Weiser, and Jeff Hall. Number 3, Lee Gibbons. Hang on, I lost the other 2.
Bert Pitcher and Harry
Early.
Yep, okay, those. Move to approve those
Okay,
and appoint those.
and I heard a second, okay. And waive the rules.
Waive the rules to do so, yes, thank you.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to waive the rules and make the appointments as stated to the county drainage districts number 3, number 4, and number 5. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we'll move to item G, under 12, Resolution 2021-07, a resolution authorizing conveyance of real property in North Logan. Council, what do you want to do there?
Remember all the details about that.
Well, I'll make a motion to waive the rules to approve Resolution 2021-07, authorizing conveyance of the real property in North Logan.
Okay.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve, waive the rules and approve Resolution 2021-07, which authorizes conveyance of real property in the thriving metropolis of North Logan. Sorry, I just have to say that because that's my hometown. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, and finally, Resolution 2021-09, a resolution amending the Personnel Policy and Procedures Manual. And we have Rod Hammer, our
Thanks.
fire chief,
I'm
to
going
talk
to
about
take
that.
this one if that's okay.
Yes, thank you.
So this resolution came about with our full-time firefighters working the 4896 shift. Under the FLSA, the Federal Labor Standards Act, firefighter pay is similar to 1 sheep equals 1/7 of a cow.
1 firefighter equals what?
It's frankly the most convoluted pay scale on the planet.
That's enlightening right there.
Pretty good.
So what happens is we're allowed to pay overtime after 53 hours per week because they spend the night there, they sleep, and that's taken into account. But when you start adding up their shifts, in 1 week, they may work 48 hours, 64 hours, 72 hours, or 56 hours. So we also have the option of designating our work period at 53 hours up to 212 hours in a pay period. So if they're working 53 hours, if our pay period's 53 hours a week and they work 72 hours, we're paying a lot of overtime. We can address that a little bit by going to a pay period of 106 hours, which is 2 weeks. And then our overtime drops to either 6 hours, 22 hours, or a negative 10 hours. And when we have a negative 10 hours, so they work 96 hours in that 106-hour pay period, they're required to take vacation pay or special pay, special pay, so that URS, the numbers under URS are 106 hours. And my guys, as they've been filling out their timesheets, are questioning why they have to give back the vacation pay that we give them to make the 106 hours. So to minimize that, if we go to a 212-hour work week, then we will decrease by 10 hours the number of vacation hours I have to turn back, and it'll decrease the overtime we have to pay by 10 hours in that given pay period. So what I've asked Amy to look at, and this whole ordinance change is driven by the changes to create the 212-hour work period and fall in line with the policies that have already been established for the Sheriff's Office and Public Works as far as the special pay instead of days off for holiday pay. So what we're asking is that the council approve a work period for the firefighters of 212 hours so that we can reduce the number of vacation hours they have to turn back, as well as reduce the overtime that we have to pay to these folks. And it's driven by their conversations and their questions, and it's the direction that they would prefer to go.
Well, I don't understand it, but I believe you.
Seven sheep is one cow.
Now it's consistent with the other organizations too.
Yeah, and we tried all along to be consistent with the Sheriff's Office and Public Works as far as the special pay. And they have been using that special pay as their turn back, but it's still a question, why do I have to give back a benefit so that we hit this 106 number when I only work 96 hours in the week or in the pay period?
So going to that, does HR or anybody have any qualms as how they take their vacation if it's 212 a week? Does that change any of their time that they're going to take off, or how that's allowed or booked or accrued?
It does not change their vacation, how they take it. What they do is pre-schedule and say, I'm going to take this shift off. When they take a shift off, it's 48 hours normally. They can take 5 hours or 24 or 12 or whatever they want to do. We just schedule it. And then that first, because it's encompassing a 4-week period, the first pay period is hours worked specifically. So if they take time off, they just get a smaller check, and then the difference is made up in the second pay period.
And if that time that they're taking off is near a holiday or a scheduled holiday that's done, that still doesn't impact them, right?
Yeah, holidays are irrelevant to us because we have to work all holidays.
Okay.
So does everybody feel good about this in your department, or?
Definitely, most of the guys we've hired have been senior paramedics and senior folks that are more interested in time off than overtime pay. So they appreciate not giving back their vacation and special pay. So yeah.
So the answer is yes,
Yes.
they're happy with it. You know, sometimes we do these things and the only thing we don't take into consideration their thought. We just try to save money, and if we're being okay with them, I'd make a motion that we go ahead and approve this.
Waive the rules.
You waive the rules. Don't forget the rules.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to waive the rules and approve Resolution 2021-09, a resolution that amends our personnel policy and procedure manual regarding the work week and the work period definitions. All in favor? Oh, is there any further discussion? Oh, I'm learning. Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Hammer. Okay, we'll now move to item 12I. This is consideration of the RAPS Restaurant Tax Committee 2021 funding recommendations. And those should be in the, for the public, those should be in the packet on the website. Is that correct, Janine? So they are there so they can, They're the last item, so they are on there if people want to look and see what those recommendations are. And then, so that would be under this county council meeting media packet. And then Executive Zook wanted to give a summary of what the committee did.
All right, thank you. I would like to give a summary. We met the RAPS committee just last Friday, and maybe I should give a little background just for the benefit of the public or anybody who's not familiar with what we're talking about. It's not a music genre, but it's a tax. RAPS stands for Restaurant, Arts, Parks, and Zoo. And we actually combine it with our restaurant tax as well. The restaurant tax was enacted back in 1992, and it's a 1% sales tax on prepared food. So restaurant food, if you go to a restaurant, you buy food, you actually pay higher sales tax there than if you bought food somewhere else or if you bought other items somewhere else. So that extra 1% sales tax that comes from restaurants, we use that for tourism promotion, recreation, culture, arts, convention centers. It could be used for airports also. And then RAPS was approved in November of 2002, and it's a 1% sales tax. So all the sales tax in the county, 1% of that gets put into a pot of funds that we can use for restaurant, arts, parks, zoo. 10% of it is specifically set aside for the zoo or zoo activities, and then the rest of it is split between essentially recreation and arts. Recreation and parks are basically combined. Those aren't necessarily separate categories. So as far as the money that is available that's generated by all of those sales taxes, we have what came in this year about $3.45 million in funds available that was generated just this year. And last year, the committee and the council reserved some of the funds, didn't spend them all. And that was almost $400,000 that was reserved last year and held over in case there were greater needs this year. Interestingly, so that adds up to about $3.8 million that we had available to spend this year. And interestingly, we only received applications for $3.4 million. So we held over some money last year in case there were greater needs, and there were actually not greater needs this year and not greater requests. My understanding, from what I've been told, we've never had a year where we had enough money to fully fund all of the applicants, and we have that this year. So the committee met on Friday and reviewed all of the applications, and I kind of thought going into it that maybe somebody would make a motion and say something like, let's just give everybody whatever they asked for, committee didn't do that, and I actually want to commend the committee. I think they did such a great job. We have some citizens who serve on that. Actually, 2 council members, Barbara and then Dave Erickson, serve on that committee, and then citizens from each of the rest of your districts are appointed to serve. And they did such an incredible job. They did the research. They read the applications. And when I say that, that's a lot of work. This is what the applications look like here. It's a pretty thick 3-ring binder, and we went through as a committee every application one by one, discussed the merits, and there were, out of all of the applications received, there were 2 that were determined to not qualify for the funds, so they were excluded, and we didn't consider those 2.
Are they listed here?
Yeah.
In the final one you received?
I think there's some that had 0, so I would guess that's the ones, right?
No.
Yeah, they are actually one of them. Number 59 is listed in 58. Was it?
Yeah.
Weren't they the 2 ineligibles?
Yeah, the 2 that were ineligible, I'm not sure if they're on the one that's before you tonight, but they were Utah State University, number 58. And then, is that on the list?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have that, that's a 0. And then Whispering Canyons Foundation, 59.
But there are 8 zeros, so.
Yeah, so that's an excellent point. There are several zeros on there because the committee did not necessarily recommend funding for everyone. So as I mentioned, the committee went through each application, considered them carefully, looked at previous year requests, previous year awards, looked at the financials that were provided by each organization. They thoroughly vetted each of these and made recommendations based on a number of criteria that they've used for many years, including not wanting to have organizations get dependent on this money, including the number of people being served by each of these organizations, including things like how much money an organization is bringing in as revenue or has in the bank. They went through so many different criteria, and like I said, I was really impressed with the committee and how much work and effort and discussion. We spent 4 hours on Friday going through each one of these. So what's before you tonight is a recommendation from that committee. Of course, you as the council can change these, can lower them, can increase them, can fund people that weren't recommended to be funded in this list. We'll turn it over to you. And if you have any questions, Councilmember Erickson or myself hopefully can answer them. We also have Betty from the Finance Department here if there are any questions about the financial side of things.
Thank you.
Oh, one last thing. So I mentioned how much we started with. 3.8 million available. We received 3.4 million in requests, and there are 2.7 million in proposed or recommended grants before you.
Well, maybe I'll start out. I'm always having to be the bad guy.
Oh, just a minute, the council member's speaking. Just a moment.
I don't know how many years ago, 4 years ago maybe, the Utah Festival Opera Company came to the county and the city and requested some additional funding to help them survive, which was granted. And then, as part of that condition for doing that, they wanted somebody from one of the government entities to serve on their board, and so you all asked me to do that. So I have been on their board now for 4 years, and have become very familiar with the challenges they're facing. And this company, which is, if you look on the internet and look up Cache Valley and you talk in Cache County and they talk about things to do, there are two things always pop out: American West Heritage Center and Utah Festival Opera always pops up as things to do when you come to Cache Valley. And the opera company, I'm amazed that they've been able to put together some kind of a show this year. They thought they were dead and gone and would never come back. But they've taken, they needed to know whether or not there would be anything for them back in November so they could start their processing and planning, because they normally hire 350 orchestra people, actors, scene types of people in total that come here for the summer to pull all of this together. And this year they're pulling something together just so that they can survive until they can get back on more firm ground, and they're doing it with 35 people. And they're doing it just in the Utah Theater and not using the Eccles Theater because they just simply don't have staff or resources to fill that large of an auditorium. And they are within a whisker's ear of a gnat's ear, of surviving and staying alive. And it would be really a detriment to to our county if they weren't here. And I'll just put up there's a big difference between what they do and what a lot of other local theaters do. This is a professional company. This isn't a local company. And I've said this before. My wife and I have been to operas and shows on Broadway, in Vienna, in London, and this is on the same level. I mean, this isn't a podunky type of operation at all. And I got a call from Annette this afternoon wondering where things stood, and I gave her the numbers, and they're about $170,000 short of what they had requested in total. And we've got excess funds, and we've got an opportunity to keep a gem for our county alive and continuing. If we don't, I mean, they just don't have any other resources. Unless we can fund them and we've got the money to do it, why not use it? And why not help them get started again? They told me that the announcement came out last Thursday that they were putting together a season. And they told me that they have had their phone calls and their internet responses have been more than they can handle because people are so anxious to be able to come to these shows and to be able to see what they put on. And so it's not just something that is kind of there. I know there are people on the council who don't participate in these kinds of things, but there are also people who don't go to the rodeo and other kinds of venues that we would take care of. And so I guess I would like to appeal to the council that we fully fund their requests so that we can keep them alive. And at least in the position I've had to be in, serving on their board, I've seen how carefully they take care of the funds that they are given and how far they can stretch these dollars. They aren't wasted.
So Carl, just for the minutes, what's the total cost of that? I can clarify that if you want.
Yeah.
So for the council's information, the Utah Festival Opera and Musical Theater submitted 4 grant applications. One was for $452,890 for essentially their general partnership with us to support their operations. The committee's recommendation was $400,000 for that grant. The second grant application they had was $10,000 for support of the Utah Theater operations. And just for clarification, so everybody knows, they have a building on this street behind us. The opera does, the Dansant building, referred to as the Dansant building. They also own the Utah Theater, which is kind of between them and the Eccles Theater, essentially. Kind of have to drive by it. And then the Eccles Theater is where they usually have done their largest productions, where it was mentioned they won't be doing productions this year. They don't own that theater. They rent that space there. Logan City owns that theater. So the Utah Theater is a theater they own and operate. And they asked for $10,000 for Utah Theater operations. The committee did not recommend anything for that grant application. The third application they requested was for a marketing campaign. They asked for $150,000 for marketing campaign, and the committee recommended $50,000. And the fourth application they requested was $8,000 for Utah Theater marketing, and the committee did not recommend any dollars for that. I should mention, I left this out of my introduction to this item. I mentioned the 3.8 million we were starting with, and the 3.4 million in requests, and the 2.7 million in recommended expenditures, but I did not mention that going into this, we also had 2.3 million, almost 2.4 million in leftover funds from previous years. So I mentioned a little bit that was held over from last year. In addition to that, there is 2.4 million available from previous years. So if you take the 3.8 million we were starting with and assume that we just funded what was recommended, we would add another 1.1 million to our fund balance, bringing our fund balance up to almost 3.5 million, probably around 3.5 million left over, if we funded this stuff that's before you today. So I would add to Carl's comments, if you want to add more money to people's applications, we have the money. We've got as of right now, 3.5 million extra that I think we should spend. I think we should get it out there. I think we should support these organizations. I wouldn't have any problem supporting this organization and fully funding their requests. And really, any of them in here, I think there are a lot of worthy causes in here. If there are any that you feel like you want to fully fund or add more funds to, I would be supportive of that.
I would just add to something. I would love to see a children's museum, and I would love to see some of that millions of dollars that we have go to starting a children's museum. It's very much wanted in this community, and it's been talked about, but it's been really hard to find funding, and I think that would be a really good start. Carl, I have
Was there a request for that?
No, there's not. It's just something that's kind of hanging out there that's been around. North Logan was trying to start one, but then the funding has been a challenge, but I know that there is tremendous interest and desire for one, and would love to see us be able to put something together, knowing that we have some funds like that to get it going. So I would love to see that. But I have a question for you, Carl, and maybe Betty knows this. Last year, I thought we gave the opera like $300,000, and they didn't have a season, and I remember them saying that they needed a certain amount of money to do advertising for this year's season, and I wondered how that's factored into, or what happened to that money that we gave them last year.
They used it, didn't they?
Yeah, we paid them, I believe that we paid them $253,000, and then they also got $185,000 in COVID funding.
You know, before
That kept them, I think that kept them
Where are they?
non-SOT and the educational programs going.
Actually, if you look at their, and I didn't bring that with me, but if you look at their financial position, they went up about $300 and something thousand.
Did they maintain their staffing levels, or did they furlough people throughout the year?
Virtually everybody.
Almost everybody was
I
laid off.
would, before I can feel good about giving them additional money without having.
Yeah, if we say we got extra money.
I'd like to have a balance sheet of all the money that we gave them last year, how they spent it, and what their projections are for this year. I mean, we're getting hit with Carl's request, everyone else's request, and it's just all in high numbers, and I don't know exactly where all this money went, because I remember we talked, just like Gina's saying, that we allocated them X amount of money, and then they come back and said, there's no way possible that we can survive at that. We need additional money. We gave it to them, and now we're hearing the exact same thing from them, that there is no way that they can make it unless we give them additional money. $400,000 is a lot of money. And so I'm not saying that I wouldn't vote to give it to them, but I want more information. I want it broken down to the council, not to just the RAPS committee, as to what we're going to do with it. I think that's only fair to the citizens. Yeah. And I think they'd be willing to do it, but I'm not at all a feeling that we want to just give them a blanket amount of money because they think they need it. Change the subject just a little bit. I got a call from the council people in Minden that there was concern about their funding, and I looked and I didn't see them being funded on anything. Did their request not get funded?
They are funded.
They're
funded number 34.
It's where?
34.
34.
Friends of the.
They asked
The library.
They asked for 50,000 and the recommendation was 14.
They
But it was
requested 50 and
50.
we gave them 14?
Yeah, 50. and
Oh, there it is.
50,000, and the
Jump the Moon
committee recommended
Foundation.
14.
Oh,
So, Councilmember Gunnell just asked me a question about how those kinds of not this one specifically, but how the committee came to those recommendations.
Where
If
was
we
it?
have all this extra money, why didn't they fully fund each one of these? And it's a different answer for each one, because each one, the committee looked at it and had discussions like, well, how much do they usually ask for? How much do we usually give them? How many people are they serving? What have they done in the past? What does their fund balance look like? There were a variety of reasons. Not necessarily every one was explained by the committee, what their reasoning was, but most of them, there was some kind of reasoning where they looked at what have we done, what have they done with what we've given them, how much, all of those criteria and more were considered. However, that's an advisory body, and if you feel like you want to spend more money or contribute more to somebody like the library, that's in your purview, and you can do that.
Was there, I'm sorry, it's not a public hearing, just a minute. Dave, can you explain what the thought process was on the Friends of the Library of Mendon? Do you remember?
Well, on theirs, they looked at that, and they looked at the number of people that are serviced for that big of request. And they had several programs, but I think we funded the area, we tried to fund the areas that have the longest lasting impact, and I believe that was the ones that built and increased some facilities in some areas, something that would have a long impact versus something that was just a program, you know, just to occur once or twice during the summer. But we, you know, and that was a huge request, and for quite a small town, which kind of, it created several other questions that we had, as we have several other entities or people or parks or places that are not necessarily incorporated, but are under. The only way they could even apply for a RAPS tax or apply for anything like that is having a sponsor like through the county. And they have parks. I know like Benson out there does have a park, but they've never applied for anything for the mere fact because they, you know, they really, you know, they're not an incorporated, they're not a city, they're not a town, and, you know, this county, we need to step up and reach out to several of them. I was worried also there were several other smaller entities and cities that we didn't get an application from that are also hurting, but they're, you know, the organization, COVID, all these things that have come about, and so we were down on a lot of normal requests that we usually get that we did not get this year, which really worried us. Now, Mr. Zook talked about the $2 million that is there. I know in the past that has actually come up at different times, but they've had that, and there's always kind of that. We've always made sure that in case there is a big request or something that is a building request or some big event thing that was not event, but some big construction thing that really needed a lot of help in that, and that's kind of been in reserve for those kind of things, emergency things, something like that. Now, what you guys deem as an emergency, I guess that's what, I would not dip into those funds personally, but if, you know, what you guys deem as an emergency, what I deem as an emergency could be two different things. But that's what I know about the Mendon one, is just that we didn't feel like it serviced as many in their dialogue and all that, as many people.
As far as where the 14,000 came from?
Yeah.
Well, just in general, the committee was trying to be frugal, and it sounds like they are frugal with this. That's why we have this surplus built up over the years, because they have been frugal and not fully funded everyone. But in their application, they specifically asked for a number of things: increasing their collection, buying books, audiobooks, bookshelves, a variety of things. But they specifically mentioned a matching grant they were pursuing, a $25,000 matching grant. They said they had raised $11,000 toward that. They needed another $14,000 to be able to meet the matching grant, and that's where the committee came up with the $14,000 amount.
Okay, thank you. Sir, this is not a public hearing. I will allow you to ask, sir, I understand.
that grant, and we just want to clarify it.
Sir, sir, thank you, but I understand that, but you have to let me chair, okay? You can ask a question, or if the council has a question for you, I can let you do that, but I'm not going to entertain any statements or arguments about why you should be getting more.
It's not arguments that.
If you have do you have a question?
Mr. Zook asked that somebody from that committee be here tonight. We've got
Okay.
committee members here tonight
I did not
to
know
answer
that.
the question.
Okay, does the council have any questions for Menden?
I think we
Just to
should give him
clarify
a
it.
chance to clarify
Okay.
what's going on.
Just to clarify.
That's only fair.
I did have a conversation with the mayor last night, told him about this, and just said, if somebody is able to be here, which I told a number of organizations that I ran into over the last couple of days, and mentioned to them that this would be here, and I just mentioned, in case there are questions, it might be good to be here.
Okay.
So I didn't necessarily request a presentation or anything like that.
Okay, I appreciate that, because if we open it up for public hearing when it's not a public hearing, we can have all sorts of, we can have all sorts of people wanting to come up and argue and talk to us about this, and it doesn't allow the council to do their work. Does the council have a question for this gentleman? Is there a clarification that needs to be made?
Well, the council hasn't seen any of this until, was it today?
Today.
We haven't seen any of this to have input from anyone until today.
And I wonder if we need to have, I think it would be good to know the money that was given to the opera, where it was spent, what they did with it, the balance sheet.
Yeah, I'd like to
whatever.
just know what's going on.
Yeah.
And the committee saw that. And
Yeah, no, they probably
they
did.
did see that. They saw their balance sheets. They saw all the
We haven't
financials.
seen that.
Yeah.
Have you seen it, Carl?
No.
I haven't either.
Gina, can I
Yes.
make a recommendation? What's before you tonight is a proposal to spend millions of dollars. It's on as an initial proposal. My recommendation would be that you take it as an initial proposal and thoroughly consider this before you spend millions of dollars. And something that maybe we could do is, if there are people that you have questions, maybe we could go through the list either tonight or after tonight, and we could make requests of those groups to come and answer any questions you might have. That could be done either in this meeting or in some other forum. And another thing maybe we could do that would be helpful is we could provide this entire packet to you. We could probably put an electronic version of it in your system so you can pull it up. If you have questions about those, you can look at specifically what they requested. And we can also make the video available to you of the RAPS committee meeting. It's 4 hours worth of video, but if you want to go through there, you can. It's in order basically based on their score, which we can provide you with the score sheet, so you can kind of see if you want to zoom to a certain portion of the video and listen to the committee's discussion about each of those items. You can do that. So those are some resources we can make available to you if you'd like to further vet and consider these things, but that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Executive Zook, appreciate that very much.
Can I ask a question about RAPS tax really quick? So how many years is it for? When they voted it in?
10 years.
10 years.
It's up next year for reauthorization.
2022, right?
Yeah, next year it'll be up. So it was originally 2002, and then it was reauthorized in 2012, and it'll have to be reauthorized next year for another 10-year.
Okay. Well, one thing I'd say that as I look at the RAPS tax and what we spend on, a lot of these things are one-time capital costs. When we're talking about allocating a huge amount of money to this, in this tax, to ongoing operating costs each year to fund an organization for something that may not be re-upped, is that a wise thing for us to be doing?
Just one piece of information to add is government entities are allowed to ask for capital funds, but nonprofit organizations are, is that correct? Okay. Nonprofit organizations are not allowed to ask for capital funds. So they are in the legislation. In the legislation, they are limited to only ask for operational funds.
Okay.
So that may be something, if we're concerned about that, we might want to change that in the legislation next time.
So let me clarify maybe my statement then. Should the existence of an organization be dependent on this funding? or should this funding supplement an organization?
Well, I think it should supplement, not, they shouldn't be dependent on it.
Do we have anybody else? Do we have Cash Theater or Four Seasons or anybody else coming to us and saying, if we don't get this funding, we're gone?
Well, the difference, I think the difference between those organizations and, say, the opera is that you've got a professional level organization. It isn't a community theater with volunteers who give their time, but these are hired people that are brought in.
So did this?
And organizations throughout the state, such as the Shakespearean Festival and Tuacahn Theater and other big name type things like that, they receive annually funding from a RAPS type of tax. I mean, it's just it's
Oftentimes an automatic allotment like we have for the zoo.
yeah. And so in answer to your question, yeah, some of these do require some supplementary funds. They try and fund themselves from donations from wealthy individuals, from ticket sales, but the cost to, for example, during the regular season, and I may not be remembering everything, but Julie can help me, but regular season for the opera, their total cost is about $5 million. And so,
the reason they asked for the 4.3 is because the 430,000 is because they wanted 10% of their operating budget. So their operating budget that they're sort of saying is around 4.3 million.
So when Tuacahn gets their money, was that written into the RAPS tax down there as a line item like the zoo was here, or do they?
Good question.
I
That's a
can't,
really good
I can't
question.
answer that.
I'm not sure either. I don't know if it's in the legislation or if it's just a policy decision that was made.
Okay.
But you know, what's the ballet company in Salt Lake? They're funded by the same kind of tax annually.
Ballet West,
Ballet West, yeah, Ballet West.
Yeah, Ballet West.
So there was a mention of the 10% in relation to the Festival Opera. They gave budget numbers, and we went through the budget numbers, and it was the committee's opinion that their budget was about 4.5 million, and that's why they gave them 450,000, or that's why they recommended 450,000 for them. They felt like that was 10% of their budget. Even though they asked for other amounts and higher amounts, they also asked for they asked that the county provide them an ongoing automatic commitment of 10% of their budget.
By way of ordinance.
Yeah, they want that to be a fixed, automatic, set amount. And the committee was not willing to do that on an ongoing basis, but they did look at that request and say, well, if they need 10%, then we'll give them 10%. And their budget did show higher numbers, but the committee went through their budget, I would say, with a fine-tooth comb and looked at what the amounts were, and their determination was that their budget was really about a $4.5 million budget.
You know, another question I have in my mind, why are they going to a smaller venue when they got a bigger venue? And what Carl said, the phone's ringing off the hook to get people to come in.
The reason is because in order to get a bigger venue, they would have had to start last November. But they didn't know if they'd be alive. Julie probably knows more than I do.
Julie, can you want to come to the mic so we can
Sure, I mean,
make sure we can hear you?
I'm not a professional on them, but I do know that part of that reason was determined, I'm probably supposed to stop talking.
Wait till we get to the mic, yeah.
Like, I'll just tell you how it is before I get here, but I know that part of that determination was made because they usually pay the Ellen Eccles Theater about $80,000 in rent for the use of that facility. And so to save that money, they went to the smaller venue. So that's what I know.
Well, I guess the question I'm going to ask you, and you can't answer it, is do they feel they've got enough people wanting tickets that they could pay the 80,000 and double their capacity. And then you never hear anything about raising their ticket rate, because that's the way you revenue. Utah State University at the basketball side, 2 or 3 times it's been raised in the last 10 years. And people pay it.
We already have, I think there's already mutiny on the bounty for the opera's ticket prices. Basketball seems to be more popular, or people are more willing to put their money down for that, I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if people aren't willing to do it.
You know, it's gonna be interesting to see how it works at the Utah Theater, because they are gonna scale back their productions, because they have to. Smaller capacity, I have not heard if they intend, they technically are allowed right now to seat every seat in the house. They don't have to have social distancing according to the state guidelines. So I don't know their plan on social distancing. I think they're hoping in that smaller venue, they'll fill it fuller, and with a smaller scale staff and productions. But a lot of the money that they have in the bank has come from the fact that they did not refund ticket sales from last year. They kept that money in the bank, so those people will already be entitled to come. And I think that's part of the reason why the phone is ringing off the hook, because people are anxious to use the money they've already invested. But they're also in a good position in the sense that people are dying to do anything, anywhere, and so everybody's gonna reap the benefit of that. Is there any other question I can?
I think the discussion is well taken, that we still need more information, and then, you know, we're not saying no, I think we're just saying, you know, let's get some more information so we feel good about the vote.
Gordon, I would suggest also, and I hope it's okay, I'm just suggesting, okay, so 4 years ago, or whenever that money was granted, there were some stipulations that were placed by Logan City and or the county, I can't remember. And I would suggest inspecting that document to make sure that those things have been accomplished as to what was required and asked for in the past, to help ensure that the funds that have been invested are not just with the dollar figures happening, but in processes that are supposed to be happening in the organization as well, just to make sure that everything's where it should have been in response to the funding that was given a few years ago. That would be an additional suggestion.
I'll be brought together and we can discuss it.
Okay.
Thanks, Julie.
You're welcome.
One other quick question. So we're talking about 4.5 million is the budget. That's this year's budget. What was last year's projected budget when you got the money, or the year before? Has there been an appreciable decline in this year's budget versus prior years when they ran a full show and had theaters and people, or was it a pretty much consistent budget?
Like it's
To my
about the same
memory,
amount of money.
it was 5 plus.
And this year that we did talk about, and there was I guess it came to us that they were looking at only going from July 7th to the end of July. It was a very short,
Yeah,
and
it's
the number
a lot
shows
short- lot
everything was
shorter.
very condensed, and anyway, and then we came up, we thought that was very, very generous for this year.
Because of the short.
Because of the short, everything, and they were scaling back. And the other thing is that came up, several people on that committee were really hoping that instead of bringing, like you mentioned, Carl, everybody from other places to come here, to utilize as much local and state talent as possible. You know, you should be singing every night, Julie, up there at the, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I did, but you didn't come and see me when I was in the music.
Yeah, well, you had sold out the tickets.
Well, I mean,
But you know what I'm saying is
yeah.
that there was, which all of these other organizations, well, most all of them, they are using a lot of local, and they're perpetuating a lot of local talent. And we wish that, it was brought up that we wish they would utilize more local people.
well, and that's the differential, I think, because, you know, Tuacahn and and Shakespearean Festival, those places, they bring in professional actors, and you get a professional level show. And that's what brings people here. That's what the differential is. But they do use local people. I mean, my wife did choreography for them for a long time. I had a son who was part of the cast for a while, and other people have too. But the main people are high-level professional.
Well, we have to wonder about that because my understanding is they bring in a lot of kids from Indiana State University. And we have, and I know this because my daughter is in the vocal performance, so I'll state that. They have a lot of great kids at Utah State that can really sing, and I think they only choose one student to be in the opera, and I wish they would use more of the USU kids. They're right here. Mr. Ballum's a professor up there, and I agree with you, Dave. I'd love to see a little bit more. I think that we also have professional musicians here.
So I was gonna say, I've heard the
A lot of
musicians
their
are here.
orchestra
Yeah.
are from here.
And some of them, haven't been, and so I really would like to see them use more local talent. And the reason given, I asked Michael about this because it is something that concerns me, and he mentioned that it had to do with scheduling and people not being able to schedule where, they've got their other jobs and they're a musician at night, and they can't schedule practices and stuff because of their day jobs, and that was the reasoning that he gave to me about that, but he didn't really address the student issue, and I still think that it would be great to get some more local talent. Thanks, I really appreciate
Tell
that.
them we can raid Tuacahn and the Shakespeare Festival for the folks from this valley that go down there and are in those shows, because I know there's several. So we can just keep them here if we're gonna keep that place.
So the way I understand the situation with Mendon and other entities that would like to have a discussion on that we should allow them to visit with us as council members. We
Mhm.
table it
Mhm.
tonight, and then we are able to they can get input to us through their council member. Does that
Yes, yeah.
sound okay with everybody?
That's a great idea.
And
Mhm.
that gives Mendon
That's a
an
good
answer.
idea.
Yeah, and that's fair.
I have one question, maybe two. I'm new to this, and I'm not stepping on anybody who's on the committee, because spending 4 hours dividing up money isn't fun. But have these entities been notified of what they've been awarded? For instance, the Cache Valley Cruise Inn, are they gonna say that's not enough and therefore I can't do it? Or like the Four Seasons Theater, they can't do it? So how does that apply in that situation?
Nobody's been notified other than a few people who may have run into some of us committee members over the last couple of days. Or if they saw it on the agenda, they might have seen that, but nobody's notified about, my understanding is that traditionally no one's notified until the council makes the final award.
So if that's the situation, do we know that that dollar is maximized if they haven't got the amount they needed or request for?
I think that most of those that happens to, we've given them, this recommendation is in line with what they usually receive. Am I correct on that, Dave?
There are several that almost request the same amount every year, and their requests are fairly generic, just even amounts, and just kind of goes. And then there are others that are very specific. In this costs this costs it, very, very specific. And they ask just exactly what that adds up to. And it changes from year to year. This year it's going to cost us $12,643, and the next year all of a sudden it's $8,922. And they're very specific. They're very thorough at those things. But then there's others that, they ask for 45,000, they always ask for 45,000, and they just kind of do a blanket and.
They ask for 45 and they're done 12 and
They
everybody's
give them
happy.
12, 15, whatever, and they're happy and they move on. And this money can be addictive if you're not careful. Yes, there's a need, but it can be addictive to where, there's a lot of these neat organizations that start out as volunteer organization and they're doing a great thing. And then all of a sudden, when they reach out and start getting some government money, then pretty soon they start relying on it more and more heavily and more heavily. And so some of those organizations are kind of very evident and others are not. I love a lot of the town requests because there's something very specific. It's going to something that benefits the entire town. And they have it, something they're building, something there, it's tangible, it's gonna be there for 30 years. And then there's some that, that it supplies things for 22 people. And it's a $40,000 request. And it makes you wonder, how broad and how really evident that, what they're asking, so.
And those are exactly the kind of things that the committee discussed. They said, well, we've been giving them this much and they've been able to operate. They always ask for more, we always give them this much, or they always ask for this much, we always give them that much. And they absolutely looked at that and said, is this growing too much? Are we giving them too much? Are we making them too dependent on these dollars? So those are all things the committee considered. But once again, they're an advisory committee, and if you feel like there's a greater need, you're the policymakers.
Well, the other thing is we have this money that we are to enhance, recreation, the zoo, we're supposed to use this money. I get a little concerned if we're holding so much back that we're not doing what we're supposed to with this money. So that's the thing that we need to be in consideration of, is if we're starting to get a big fund there, that isn't what the people paid the tax for. They paid the tax for to use it and enhance the county. And we need to, doesn't hurt to hold a little over, but when you start holding over multiple millions, I think we're out of line.
Thank you. Carl, I have a question for you since you serve on the board for the UFOC. Can you get us some more information? Are you in a position that you could get us that information about
I'm sure Annette would
what they
provide that
spent
quickly.
last year, and what were the other things we wanted to know? How they used the money we gave them last year. And what were the other things, Gordy, that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think that was a big thing.
That was the big one.
What actually we bought with that money last year. And I think the other thing is I'd like to have some information from them, as if they could project that they could run a longer season and they could still use the Echo Center and have more people participate. Maybe this isn't the year to raise the ticket price, but I'm concerned that what I'm seeing out there is everybody is just dying to get out of their house and go somewhere and do something this year. They're saying that the parks and the national parks and all that, they're just being overwhelmed with requests to go in the backcountry and all this kind of thing. And you're seeing that all over America. Everybody, I plan on going fishing to Alaska this year, and they're saying that it is unbelievable how the lodges are all filled up. They're full now.
Wow.
And it's just because nobody went last year, everybody wants to go this year. And I'm thinking that mentality is going to cross over into the opera. And so, of course, I have no understanding of the opera and how it works. I'm willing to support it, but there's questions that I'd like to ask.
The other thing, Carl, was how they're fulfilling that agreement from several years ago.
That's right. That was another one.
And I know that Holly Danes has a copy of that, because we were discussing this just last week, and she told me that she had pulled up that document
Oh,
and
good.
looked at it.
I couldn't
so-
find it, so, okay. That is really good. Clerk Bradfield? Yes?
I served on the Echoes board, and so I think one thing to consider would also be the demographic of the individuals who frequent the theater and the opera. And if you'd like me to, or Carl, I'd be willing to approach them, because they would keep kind of a demographic record, and I think that would also be important, because as you know, a certain demographic is less likely to perhaps go out in public. There may be some other factors.
That's good. Can you get that information from them as well? Their demographic.
Demographic of who
Of who
buys
they're-
tickets.
Who bought
Yeah, who
tickets,
buys
where they're
tickets.
from.
A lot of your questions might be answered by looking at their application as well.
Okay.
Their application in particular, the Utah Festival Opera, is very thorough. They have their budget in here, they have their audit in here. This is it. This is a pretty thick application here. This is like 50 pages or something.
Okay.
Just theirs, so.
Carl, would you check through that 50 pages too, in case we as the council miss it? I think you know a lot about it, and if you could help get that information, it would be really helpful.
Now I'm to understand that we will have all this on the website as quick as possible.
Well, not this document. I think this document is private, correct?
Do not
Yes.
put that on.
Don't put that on the
That's
website. That is
financial
just for us.
information that-
Okay, so we don't put that on, but we do put up the list.
The list
list will
with
be
the
on.
recommendations. It's in the packet right now, so.
I think we share the applications with the council, but I would agree, there's sensitive information, private information in these applications.
It's private, so.
There is one other modification that we wanted to recommend, and that was to the rodeo.
Oh, right, the rodeo.
Number 12.
Number 12.
I almost forgot about
We
that.
wanted to add another 11,000 to that one that didn't get on this request, and that was for, we actually discussed it this morning at the fair, at the fairgrounds meeting.
Advisory board.
So that was one that didn't make it on this list that we wanted to request. So at whatever point you make a motion, it probably would need to be added in there.
To make sure we add that in.
That was due to a new event.
Yes.
That is to be, well, you've been all approached with that, I'm sure, but that's the new event that is to be held at the fair this year. So,
Is that the
breakaway.
rodeo on Wednesday?
The breakaway, yeah.
The breakaway
It's gonna be
roping.
held Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
I think that's one, to talk about the fair and rodeo for a minute, the thing that I differentiate in my mind there is that something that's run by the county and run very, very well by our fair and rodeo managers. So any of the profits or small loss carry forwards we have in any one particular area are kind of offset where that helps for future funding, where when we dole out dollars to other entities, we don't get to recoup that cost, because when we give it to the fair, they do a very good job, and we can see the costs are reduced, or we bring in more money, we add an event, we see if it makes business sense, we bring in more money, we bring more ticket sales.
Do we
We're able to
have,
offset those
There
costs.
were also a few of these that were, you can see their amounts are lower, because there has been some that have canceled everything clear till this fall. And they were only gonna do like one Christmas event. And then there's some that weren't gonna, actually, they're all canceled and they wanted money, but they were all canceled and weren't gonna do anything until next, of 2020,
Till next
summer of
spring.
2022. Which some of them we says, hey, okay, we'll give you a little bit to survive, but we can't give you, those full amounts just to start, padding the coffers.
question for probably Mon, do we have a participant, that's not a participant, a spectator number of who goes to the rodeo, and then who goes to the actual fair? Do we have a number? The fair's probably hard to even judge, but the rodeo, you've probably got a number, haven't we?
Yeah, we added, we're a 4-night rodeo, and we added the extreme bronc last year, and just kicked that up, so we're 15, probably 18,000 with the other one.
18,000 that attend the rodeo.
And then 3, we're 5, 6, that depending on, full capacity, and we was selling out. Last year, even with COVID, and what we was able to pull off due to him supporting the county attorney and all, it was unbelievable, to be honest.
And I guess, I might as well tell everybody what I'm thinking about. What is the capacity of the opera in a season? How many do we actually go? How many do we actually entertain?
I
in a
think it's
season?
about 20,000.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of about the same.
I think so. Don't you think, Julie? That's the number that sticks in my head because of another event that I am part of that's the same number.
Even, so total ticket sale numbers? per
Yeah, how
year?
many?
I can't say off the top of my head. I have on my computer, I could check.
That is in the application I think it is in the application somewhere, and I can't remember it either, but it did say it.
So the other question is if we scale it down to the smaller venue, how many will that be? It'd be interesting to know.
So the Eccles, holds about 1,109 people if it's fully sold. And I don't know the exact number on the Utah, except for I know that they all nearly only a third of, you know, what the capacity of the Eccles is.
Okay.
That's good to know.
Gordon, in answer to, you asked me a question, and I'll throw it out, numbers I've heard over the many years I've been here, and of course, it's escalated, but, one number that was out, and how that come out, I can't answer. But it was 50,000, 60,000 people, and some of that could be duplicate, but they figured that it was rolling through the fair
In the 4 days.
in that 4 days.
Makes sense.
Thank
Really,
you.
that was back when we was really pushing on 3 days. But we do have shows starting Wednesday, anyhow, now we have the road, that Stream Bronx, so that escalates it. It's just grown, we're adding another lane involved in that on the fair side. It'll be Monday, that I think is gonna be quite a hit too. What we've gotta do is get the word out to the people.
Yeah.
Because it's like even with that Extreme Bronx, and we did everything we could about just going door to door, and then as soon as you're done, I said, why didn't I know about that? I would've wanted to be there, because people travel a long ways to get that. We had, you know, you couldn't go in the uniform.
I'm actually more
Right.
interested in a whole night of just bull riding. Think we can do that?
You put Gordy on a bull, that place would be sold out 3 times over.
You can bet even in this day, I was smart enough not to get on a bull.
We can do an extreme bull night.
It better be a bull calf.
Gosh.
I'll do it if you will, Mont.
Okay, so I'll just stick the RAPS tax on the next agenda, on our next, for May 11th. Is there any objection to that?
We can let gentleman from Mendon talk tonight, or are we letting that go through the
He
council?
can go through the council.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to start setting a precedent. And
If
of
you'd like
doing
the
that.
answer to the question about the number of ticket sales, I found it in their application. In 2019, they sold 33,767 tickets, and of those, 9,600 came from out of state, and 17,000 of them came from zip codes 75 miles from Cache County.
What was the total, David?
33,767.
Oh, 33,000.
33,000.
But 17,000 that was out of the valley.
That would be
26,000.
26,000.
2019.
That was 2019.
That was 2019.
Yeah, not last year, because they canceled their season last year, but 2019, 33,000 total, and about 26,000 of those came from either out of state or 75 miles away from here.
Thank you.
Now, did I hear that right? 33,000 were ticket buyers and 26 were out of state?
Or out of county.
About
26,000
yeah.
were out of county.
Over 26,000, almost 27,000 were from either out of state or at least 75 miles away.
The right to
75
say they
miles.
helped
That's an increase from the number I remember hearing earlier.
75 miles away.
Okay, let's move to item J.
Salt Lake.
And this is the next steps regarding the land use code, following approval of our alcohol ordinance. I talked to Chris about this and thought that it would be good if we had a discussion about what we wanted in that land use ordinance, what we wanted planning and zoning to look at. And he's got a timeline in the documents he gave to us of how this would work. So anyway, Chris, I'll let you take it from there.
Thank you. I think you've covered most of it. It's a very brief memo. I included some additional information from your discussions from past meetings. So as you look at that, you'll recall, I'll touch on the timeline in a minute, but you'll recall that we looked at 2 primary approaches to preparing a land use ordinance that addresses the winery component from the alcohol ordinance that was recently adopted. The first was we were going to potentially add wineries as part of the existing agritourism definition and requirements. I discouraged that because I recognize that that section of code needs more help than just plopping that in there and hoping it works. I would much rather that we reconsider the agritourism piece and make it a broader, more comprehensive piece of ordinance. And that's necessary and needed, but maybe not the right timing with the winery component. The other option was to pursue a specific and a new use related definition like we just did with the small scale slaughter facility. and that would be called winery. Both those options are included in your packet for review or to refresh your minds as you look at those. We prepped those things. There's been some minor level of review. Keep in mind this was just between staff and the council. This has not gone through the Planning Commission or a full vetting process. So I'd anticipate that there would be some tweaks to be made. I know Councilmember Ward had identified there were questions about how do we limit, or what's the scale, how do we conceive a way to limit the scope of what this is. So it doesn't just turn into, well, from my perspective, not yours, but it doesn't just turn into a large production facility rather than an actual agritourism related use. And so those pieces have been left blank in the language in the proposed code, and would be something that the council would consider after the Planning Commission really digs in and comes up with some solutions. I'm going to point back to that timeline now. If this were to move forward, after confirming some of your priorities and some of these code issues, we could get it to the Planning Commission in May to start a discussion, make them aware of what's happening, bring them up to speed with the discussions the council's had, and start the discussion there. We would draft ordinance then, working with the county attorney's office with John Luthi, to make sure we're having a proper reflection of what needs to happen. We'll have the Planning Commission review in June that draft ordinance and provide some additional feedback. And then in July, we'll be able to hold a public hearing and really bring the public's comment in, make sure we've covered bases. It's going to follow a similar pattern the small-scale slaughter facility did. That's moving fairly quickly, but there has been a lot of discussion at the council level. Best case scenario, right? Timeline. Best case scenario that we can move through it that quickly. That means it would come to you in July or August, realistically. But really what I'd like to hear from the council to take back to the commission is, what do you think needs to be a priority in the discussion? What are your concerns? What are some things that you want to see the council or the commission dig into or research, or the staff can dig in and research? Because we'll work on those pieces.
Can you define farm stay?
I feel like that's a test. It depends, right? I can, but what would you like?
Well, to me, it seems broad.
It is broad. So typically when someone says a farm stay, they're going to limit it to a number of nights. They're going to limit it to maybe the number of people that can be there. There's a number of things you could tie into that. It's broad. Is that from the winery definition? Oh, that's agritourism.
Right under your second red line, farm stay, educational class, group event. Is there a limit on group event or whatever? I mean, scope?
No scope, no limits there. The only limits you'll see are going to be tied to that overnight accommodation where there's some specific limitations to the number of people who can be present.
So that would wrap to the farm stay, in a sense, it would.
Yeah, I don't like that section of code.
Yeah.
I wouldn't encourage that. I think that's a section that needs to have some amendment. And when that was adopted, this was, I know you've heard this from me before, so I apologize again, but this was adopted to accommodate the exact same people who the winery section of code is being used to accommodate. And I have a major concern with drafting code for single-use items because it inevitably fails, and we find all the problems with it on the back end. And that's a lot more work for the citizen to parse out what happens. It's a lot more work for the attorney's office to help interpret. It puts us at risk legally, and it makes things much more open than we intended. So I agree that there's problems with that language in agritourism. I'd love to rewrite that section to be broad and consider more items.
Well, I'm just hearing other things who are waiting to come in based on what is agritourism, and then you see farm stay or group catch you in a 22.
Yeah, that could be an option then if we wanted to pursue the agritourism rewrite now. I would anticipate double the timeline because it's a more comprehensive section of code.
But we don't need to necessarily worry about that if we create a new land use. I mean, that's, right, Nolan, you're looking at that 17.07.030 and attachment for 6140 agritourism. But we don't really need to do much of that at all. If we add 6150 winery, then that agritourism is kind of a moot
Yeah, so those, maybe I wasn't clear, so thank you for clarifying. So the attachment 4 is one option. The attachment 5 is another option.
And attachment 4 is the option you don't recommend.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I liked 5. It definitely clarified, more easily understandable to me at least, what it is we're trying to accomplish here.
That's the new definition. Attachment 5 is the new definition.
Correct. That's the one identified as 6150 winery. It's a new use-related definition. There's 3 portions of that that are highlighted or left blank. That's specific to how much wine. It says wine produced by the processing facility must be produced from 51% or more of the ag products. That reflects the current requirements for typical agricultural operation. For something to qualify as ag, it's 51%.
51's a little low for me.
What's
We have
that?
For an agriculture,
That's-
so, where is that in place? If I'm gonna start a farm and I have to grow 51% of what I'm.
Sorry,
doing, where's that at?
it's 75%. I misstated. 75% in the agricultural manufacturing section. So the previous page, attachment 4, that's the current requirement for ag manufacturing. So maybe you go to Weeksbury Farm or something like that. They have to have a 75% that's produced on site.
How do we,
We don't.
so why do we have it?
Great question. This precedes me. So the great thing when we talk about, say, for example, small-scale slaughter facility, and we set that maximum of 1,500 animal units, we have a way to check that through the state because we know it's documented. We have no way to check any of the other pieces unless we go into their tax records. I mean, we'd have to do a little digging, but we probably could track it down.
So couldn't we just then rely on the state for this stuff to say, if we want to keep it at a certain scale, we just say, you get to produce X number of cases? Isn't like
We could.
5,000 cases or something the appropriate number to keep it at small scale, and that's what the state's using too? So we just put in a.
That's what we went for number 6. There's a few options here. So that's another blank in this is production of wine is limited to no more than blank cases per year.
I think that's probably a much cleaner and easier thing from your standpoint, because how do you even know? You just say, that's what you get to produce. We've done it for the small scale. It seemed to work good. It doesn't hamstring him. All these other things look to me to really, we're almost de facto running a winery as the county if we put in percentages.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. I made a note here for the Planning Commission as a follow-up for them is how do you limit the scale? And so they're familiar with trying to limit those pieces. I think, like you said, they would trend toward what you just pointed to because it's easier to identify, but they'll look through each one of those options.
It's interesting how when we talk about these limiting the scale, then all of a sudden when they start production and they get going, we are tickled to death that it says Cache Valley on the label. We're tickled to death that it was made locally. We're even if they did bring all the berries in from somewhere else, they'll say Cache Valley on. Boy, we tout that and jump up and down. It's locally made, and Gosner cheese. All the milk come from Cache Valley. He's asleep. Anyway.
No, I'm just trying to think of how I want to answer that.
Some does, but a lot of it could be Idaho milk.
The majority, the thing to know about Cache Valley, and I think Paul's onto something here. Now that we've approved a winery, we want to also approve as much as we can to make sure this is a viable business. We don't want to hamstring them. We've already had the discussion that the majority of the council and the majority of the people, and I shouldn't say the majority, but the majority of the people that talked to the council was in favor of the wine. And so now that it's approved, we had our discussions. I spoke against it, but I also want to make sure that anyone that wants to do a winery in Cache Valley, now that it's legal, we ought to do everything in our power to make it so that they can make a living at it. We don't want to restrict them so that they can't make a go of it. And so as we do these additions to the thing, We want to do it so that it will enhance them and help them to be able to be successful at what they're doing. We don't want to do all this and then try our best to make them make poor decisions. And we don't want to tie their hands, and I think that's what Paul's always trying to say. We don't want to tie their hands. Now, I'll answer the question about Cache Valley Dairy, or not Cache Valley Dairy, Gosner Foods. The only cheese that they make at that plant, most people don't know this, is Swiss cheese. You go down there and buy cheddar or Colby Jack or any of that, that's made somewhere else and brought in. It's not Cache Valley milk that produces that. They only produce Swiss cheese because that's where it's the most profitable for them. And
But I'm asking, where does the milk come from? Does it come from Cache Valley dairies around here? Or
not all of it.
Oh, see, but yet, you know, they put that label, and I'm proud as can be of Gosner's. I'm glad they do it. They
you'll buy
provide
it
so
and it's
much. I'll
good.
buy it. I love it. But it tastes a little different when it's Idaho milk. No.
You know, does that say,
You know,
does
we're
that?
happy they got a label. We're happy they're in business and
You know,
going strong, you know.
We're so happy in Cache County now, if we get a label on some wine that it's Cache Valley wine, we're all gonna take a sample.
And we are the wine and cheese capital of the world.
I want to see a label on Gordy,
Wine and
right
cheese.
there.
We just need a cracker plant, we're all the way there. Oh, we do. Pepperidge Farm, yeah.
At least that's your reasoning. that we're
So this is interesting, because I know that the council has expressed previously that there's a need to keep this as an agricultural type use.
Yeah.
And so there is a line you're walking that says, we want to have them be successful, and we're gonna say, here's your max if you wanna qualify as agriculture. There's still a step above that they could step into, right? We're not limiting them on what they can produce. We're limiting the type of use in that zone for that type of operation. So keep in mind, the Planning Commission is gonna look at it that way also. What does this look like as an agricultural use, not as a production facility? Because we're kind of balancing both of those pieces.
Well, and there's the differential between Gosner's and what we're talking about here.
But it's good that if they grow to a point, they maximize themselves in that parcel, they have the opportunity, hey, you know what? We're gonna open up another one in downtown Cove.
And
They have options, yeah.
don't we do that, if I'm looking at this, it's only a conditional permit in an A10 zone,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, I mean, let's just look at this from a practical standpoint. If I just want to open up a wine processing facility, and I don't care where the grapes are grown, right? It makes less than zero business sense for me to go buy 10 acres of ag land so that I can plop a manufacturing facility there. Nobody's gonna do that, ever. So what we're talking about is preserving somebody that has some ag land and they wanna put a different type of crop on it and do this. I think that's your limiting factor just right there. Going any further doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you just wanna open up a wine manufacturing facility, that business is a hard, tough business. And you're not gonna buy any additional land you don't need.
But on the scope of agritourism, this has already been approached to me, that if I'm in the A10, I follow the scope of agritourism, another person who has a lot to them and they've done a conditional use permit are worried about how much of a farm state or how much is coming into them next as far as group size and everything else. Those are positions that I'm wanting to know, because other people are asking me, saying, okay, you gave permission in an A10, and that was a farmhouse, and now all of a sudden I've got 30 cars coming in at the night, and I didn't want that as an agritourism. So we've got to be careful on the agritourism. I understand what Paul's saying, we want them to be successful, but at the same time, I want to know the impact to the surrounding area who is A10.
Well, this isn't agritourism, though. We're talking about a different thing. This isn't agritourism.
Well,
It's the same idea.
we're walking along the same lines as what we're talking about, are we not?
It's real close. I mean, it's agritourism without putting it in that
Yeah,
definition.
it really is.
It feels like this option was the short-term solution to accommodate that use, with the longer-term approach being we need to rewrite the agritourism piece. That could probably tie back in with a bunch of other pieces.
Because all I'm saying is now we've impacted what is A10 dramatically based on what we allowed to go in under the caption of agritourism. So I think that needs to be viewed, because then that scope, or that door is now open and it's wider and wider as we define that.
It's that middle ground. There's no question that ag historically has played host to a number of different uses. And the county's pendulum has swung back and forth on what they will allow. So previously, the ag zone allowed almost everything in the zone. And so it really wasn't primarily agricultural in its uses allowed. It swung back to more of to the other side, and maybe more swinging back a little more centrally now for the types of uses that occur there.
I mean, we get back to where the RU2 goes next to the city because that's where development is. But if we're out in the A10 area and now I throw in a bunch of people staying in a different area and this other, two other lots next to me at A10 saying, what happened to the agricultural definition of agricultural agritourism? Is all I'm saying is we need to view that carefully.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to do. Yeah, that brings up a good point. You allow what we're talking at farm stays and things like that, then what are we going to require as far as road construction?
Yeah.
And road maintenance and things like that, because suddenly it's not just farmland that's growing grapes. You're bringing people in, so are we going to require upgraded road standards and traffic patterns and all of those kinds of things that as Nolan pointed out, will have an impact on the surrounding land.
Well,
We also know that the Planning Commission is already starting to hear cannabis production. It's a whole new thing we're going to start talking about is medical marijuana, and that's just, it's going to come under the same type of an ordinance. And so we're just barely starting to see all of this interesting stuff coming in. And I mean, we'll discuss that this year. Before the year's over, we'll be discussing about medical marijuana and where we're going to grow it in Cache County, because the state says that it can be grown in Cache County. So
we don't have farm stays in the 6150 winery. So you're deviating from the agritourism fairly significantly by not including that language.
Yeah, it isn't included there. It was referenced in one of the meetings, but I didn't have really direct, input to say put it in there, so it's not in there. But again, keep in mind what I've written. I'll read back what I've written down so far to see if it kind of covers the general direction of what the council would like the commission to consider: how to limit scale, how to still provide room for growth, how to limit impact on neighbors, how to define or address the impact on the agricultural zone itself, how is access addressed. Are there other items that have come to your minds as we've talked about this?
You want us to give you more?
I want all of what you got, or we'll have to keep going around back to the commission and back to you.
The whole idea, well, maybe the whole idea, but a major portion of this idea was to encourage preservation of ag land. And I think that needs to be a component.
Well, when we say on
Somehow.
item number 4 of 6150, retail sales, tours, tasting facilities, food preparation, and those things, that dramatically impacts adjacent agricultural
It does.
positions.
Mhm.
And it could, I'll stipulate that. But I just drove through, I went and picked up a car in Seattle, and I drove through central Washington and central Oregon, and I drove past and Idaho too, coming through. I drove past a lot of wineries, and 100% of them, I was in ag land like you couldn't believe ag land.
It would be interesting if they defined tours or size or anything else in those wineries in that ag land.
I mean, they had operations, they had manufacturing and stuff, you could see that, and but you got out there and there was no doubt that was ag land all the way through. Just no doubt. And so if we're putting it in an A10 zone, the whole business plan of those places is to have We're not talking about putting it in an industrial zone, you got a little brew pub that you've opened up in a warehouse. These are estate wineries. Their whole reason for existence is to have it look agricultural. If they don't do that, that's a failed business model and it won't work. Just doing this alone, I think you open it up for ag. I didn't drive by one that I drove by and thought.
But a lot of those are producing, and then that crop is being shipped to a processor, probably. They're probably not processing a lot of on that place. Some may, a lot of them probably aren't.
But the ones that are, I mean, even if the ones that have, because somebody could have 10 acres of grapes and just be sending it out, just like you have a dairy, you send your milk. But for the anybody that's gonna build some type of a facility on their land, that was not any kind of an industrial look. That was an ag look.
Well, Madam Chair, I was gonna make a motion when we approved the agenda that we had to be out of here by 6:30, so we're having another one of
We're real
those.
close to fixing a time to adjourn.
Yeah, well, I recognize that John White isn't here anymore, and John White was always saying what? Call the question. So.
Call the question, what are we gonna do with this, though?
He just wanted input.
Is that enough input?
Yeah.
If there's
You guys
more,
have
you can always give me a call, you can text me, email me, it doesn't matter, whatever. We'll get this to the planning commission with the direction you've given so far and get things rolling that way. And again, if anything comes up, if you want to chime into, I know Nolan's at the planning commissioner meetings.
This next Thursday, you're saying? it'll be there?
May 6th.
Yeah, so.
Thursday, okay.
Thursday.
We'll start the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Chris,
Welcome.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, so our other business is, we have UAC Management Conference, May 12th through the 13th, Davis Conference Center in Layton, and we have David Zook, David Erickson, myself, and Carl attending. Is there anyone else that wanted to go to that? Okay, Richmond Black and White Days Parade is Saturday, May 15th at 5 p.m. That's David Zook, myself, Barbara, and David Erickson. Anyone else want to join us?
Won't be here that day.
I may.
Okay. What about you, James? You want to come?
Yeah. Better events than Valley.
Yeah, you want to come? I'd love to have you. Okay, Jess, you coming? Okay, so, yeah, Black and White, add James and Jess. Great. Glad I asked. Okay, the Smithfield Health Days Parade is Saturday, June 5th at 10 a.m. And we have David Zook, myself, Barbara, and Carl. Anyone else want to join us for Smithfield Health Days?
Can all of these be reviewed as we get closer to those times on the calendar?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll pop into that one possibly.
Okay, that is your district. You should probably pop in.
In your home.
That is your hometown. Okay, let's move to council member reports.
We're done.
And Nolan, I'll start with you this time.
I don't have much, but I still want to see, it was interesting talking about transportation, and then we just did the road manual. I still think we need to go back and visit pioneering on the road manual, because we go through this on houses and everything else, just like we had tonight. This individual agreed to pay for the road, but we're going to face that in broader aspects on the outer lying of the county, and I think we need to be ready to address that.
Okay, thank you. Is that all?
That's all I can think of. I'm like, Gordon, it's too late, so.
Okay.
I
Paul?
want out. Moving on. I don't have anything.
Okay.
I've
Carl?
said enough tonight.
You've said enough. Okay. Gordy?
I was in a committee meeting a little bit earlier in the day, and one of the things came up that kind of didn't sit right with me, and so I need James to give us some direction on it. Right now in the county, the way things are going, you cannot combine parcels. And I'm of the opinion that that's a bad idea, that when we have property that we buy or purchase and it's adjacent to other property, we should be able to combine it without having the county tell us that we can't do it. And so it's in your office now, you know, you need to really see what's going on there because there's a problem.
I thought we just saw that a parcel was combined on our Sunshine Terrace issue. They've combined a vacant lot with
Well, the
one
way
of
I
their other
understand
things,
it
so.
now, they wouldn't be able to do that now, so.
Okay.
Well, we talked about it.
Yeah, anything else, Gordy?
No, that's all
Is
right.
that due to a subdivision rule, or where is that ruling that you can't combine a parcel?
Maybe it's gonna come to a subdivision rule, but as of right now, you can't divide two ag parcels.
Oh, you can't combine.
Correct.
Combine? Okay.
Does that consider the natural barrier, or is it just anything else?
I don't know, I thought we had a good system going over the last 100 years. Why are we changing it? And so I'm gonna ask.
Do you know,
James
Chris?
to
I can
figure
add
out.
a little light to that perhaps. I think there's probably two different things you're thinking of. One is the land use component, which you can combine, you can divide properties, agricultural, as long as it's not part of a subdivision, it doesn't require the county to say anything. When we start talking about taxation and how tax identification numbers are assigned, that's a different animal, and that might be what you're talking about. And that is in, I think John's looking at that right now and working on that with Kathleen and with Devron Anderson with how those parcels can be adjusted or properly recognized.
I wasn't gonna bring it all up, but the discussion was that our county recorder has made the stance that there will be no parcels that will be combined, agriculture, anything like that. Now, I can understand if you've got a lot, you know, a subdivision, and somebody wants to do something different inside the subdivision, that subdivision had covenants and you can't change them without everyone agreeing to. I can understand that. But when you take a stand that you can't, you know, you can't combine lots, and the way we understood that situation there, is they said he would not allow one piece of property that was adjacent to the other piece of property that were both trying to get enough acres for a green belt situation, that, you know, that would not ever be permitted again the way it's being looked at in Cache County, and I don't think that's right, so there needs to be some clarity.
Gordy, should we put this on the agenda for next time and talk about it?
It needs to be more like in a workshop or something.
In a workshop?
Yeah, something,
Okay.
that- when we have one, maybe that could be a double.
Okay.
with something
I just
else,
brought
but-
it up so that James could look at it, because I think there's some
Okay.
discussion.
In fact, I don't know why we need to.
Would you?
Just have
One of the
James
best
look at it,
examples
but
was
if
that
we
if
need
you
to do
were
something,
in a
then we can
subdivision, you
workshop.
bought two lots, and you put the home right in the middle of the two lots, and it actually overlaps on the two lots. And you're supposed to put half of the home assessed in this lot and half the home in that lot?
Yeah.
No, you can just combine it into one lot.
But that gets back to the subdivision rules, because now you've changed the lot numbers.
Right.
No,
You
you
made
didn't
it one.
change the lot numbers, you just put the house in the middle of two lots.
With a boundary of the two lots that goes down the middle of your house.
Do you guys want to get with James and talk about this?
It's kind of an issue. Yeah,
Yeah,
it would.
okay.
Anyway,
There's more
concern me.
scenarios
I
that
think
makes it
we're
even
going the wrong
wackier.
direction.
Just file that.
There's
as a
common
tax
sense about all
policy,
this,
always
really.
to store
Well, there is,
state
but then you get to an HOA and you try that and you say, well, I've reduced my lot from 2 to 1, so therefore I only have one fee on an HOA because of a lot.
It goes on, doesn't
Oh my
it?
Yeah.
gosh.
So,
Okay. David? Dave,
You know, I'm done.
you're done?
We started at 9 o'clock this morning, I'm done.
Okay, I do have two things, so my apologies. The first is really quick, and that is that the planning department has asked me to just remind you guys, if you had any assignments to attend meetings for our general plan, to please remember to attend them. They said they've been missing council members at meetings, and so just a gentle reminder about that. And then the second thing I wanted to bring to your attention was I've been finding out, and this is why I brought this up about pickleball when we're talking to Providence, was that an issue has arisen in North Logan where there are pickleball courts going in using RAPS funds that are within, I think they're about 80 feet of a house, 80 feet of several houses, but 30 feet from their property line. And at first they were okay with that, but it's coming to find out now that pickleball is a really, really noisy sport.
Is it really? I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, and I'm just barely learning, I've just found this out in the last couple days. And so my concern is when we're approving, and I want to find out more, I've got more research to do, but I wanted to give you guys a heads up. As we're approving pickleball courts, I think we need to be careful about where they're going so that we don't have to expend funds in the future to fix or mitigate anyway, there is a situation in North Logan, and I'm just gonna say, you know, we might need to expend some more funds to mitigate what is going on there, because,
What, the county?
See,
yeah.
that's
Whoa,
not
whoa, whoa,
our-
whoa, whoa.
From
that isn't-
RAPS.
That isn't our.
Oh, no, throw a flag on that one.
Well, I would like us to look at it. I think
North
it's
Logan
important.
City's problem, if you
Well,
ask me.
let me finish explaining. What's happened is they're halfway built. Just a second, John. They're starting. They were approved. North Logan worked with the residents. They thought everything was fine until the residents started to find out from other people who live that close to pickleball courts how bad it is and how noisy and constant it is to have that many. And so it is. North Logan isn't have a whole bunch of money to remedy this. And so I would like you guys to take a step back and a deep breath. I understand where you're coming from. That was my very first thought. But as I started looking at this, I thought, you know what is our responsibility to citizens countywide? Because obviously it's not gonna just be North Logan residents that use that place at Oak Ridge Park. It'll be Logan, it'll be Hyde Park, it'll be other places. And so I'm hoping that you guys can think about it. I can get some more information to you, of what can be done, because it really sounds to me that it is a difficult situation for these people and not what they expected. And so I'm just asking you guys to give some consideration to that.
A good idea. Do we have a road grader? They just break up the cement and.
Front end loader.
So,
Well, luckily they
volume problem is
haven't,
solved.
luckily they haven't done that. They're trying to figure out mitigation. They're trying to figure out what they can do, but, you know, they've already spent part of the RAPS money. And we have money. We can fix things, if needed, but I just want you guys to think about that. If you would, please, I'd appreciate it.
They just need to require foam balls and quiet paddles.
Well, figure out how you can enforce that. That's the difficulty, is enforcing that 24/7. You have to have somebody standing there telling people, is that a quiet ball? Is that a fiberglass paddle? You know, that's hard, you know, so, I don't know. Anyway, I would just ask you guys to consider that possibility. John, do you wanted to say something really fast? The mayor who,
Pickleball.
yeah,
So last week I was down in St. George at the League of Cities and Towns. I was sitting in a room and Mayor Can, North Logan, your mayor,
Yeah, Mayor
saw
Can.
me, and there's Mayor Drew. Let's talk to him. And Alan Luce, the city administrator, was there, and also the public works director. We got to talk to him about what's going on with pickleball. So they said that they had already dug up the earth and they started laying the base for the pickleball. Well, we can't just, you know, stop in the middle of where we're at. And apparently one of the city employees said, well, they had a family member that lives in Creekside Townhomes next to Lenhart Park in Providence, and apparently there was some issue. So let me give you a little bit of history. With RAPS money in 2017, awarded in 2016, Providence City was the first city to have, my understanding, to have pickleball courts. So we built 4 at Lenhart Park. James Swink is a Providence resident. It was hugely popular. We had people from all over Cache Valley come to Providence to play pickleball. We had no complaints. The people that lived in Creekside Townhomes thought it was great. They were thrilled to have it there. Had no complaints until last year. We had some new residents move in. One's a professor of mechanical engineering and aerospace engineering, and he has made it his mission in life to dig down into this whole pickleball thing. So that's where it's at right now. We put up sound barriers. It's probably 50 feet away. He said he's done some research and it needs to be at least 2 football fields away, pickleball courts, from any residences, which makes it impossible for us to put in any park in Providence, let alone parks here in Cache Valley. So does that mean the death of pickleball? Anyway, it's kind of like if you buy a house down in Layton near Hill Air Force Base, and after you move in there, you complain about jet noise.
well, this
we've
is a
had-
different, opposite situation where the homes were there first.
Yeah. So the homes were there. This family moved in there about less than a year and a half ago. And last year, things are quiet at parks, as everybody knows. We have a splash pad at that park. It was also paid for with RAPS money, and when the kids are there, they squeal and make a lot of noise. And these residents haven't who moved in recently haven't experienced the park full tilt with kids in it and everything else, so they may not be happy with splash pads either. So, you know, kind of take the, you know, when you hear complaints with a grain of salt, so.
Well, I just wanted to mention it because I've seen some articles from other places in the United States where it's an issue, and so I think I'm giving you a heads up, this could be a growing issue, and it might be something we need to look at, so, thank you, John.
Yep.
Is there any further business? Seeing none, we're adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Feel bad that you